What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in X-Men as Omega-level Mutant? Part 3. If you enjoy this type of content, please brutally slash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Remember to check out the original story linked in the description. Let's get into it without further ado. Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, Professor X's office. The professor was surprised when I entered his office with Emma Frost, but he quickly recovered and welcomed us with a smile. I could see the empty cup and stacks of paper piled on his desk. It was already 5 in the morning, and after that botched mission, not to mention that stack of papers, he got his hands full. He hadn't got a shut eye. You should really sleep sometime, Professor. The kids would be worried if you collapsed from overwork, I said, pointing to Emma to take a seat. So, how's Jean doing? I asked. She's stable for now. Thanks. If not for you, the situation could have become worse, he replied, his gaze lingering on Emma for a moment. So we meet again, he said to Emma. 2 years, 3 months, Emma replied. You two know each other? I asked. Yes. I wanted to recruit her in X-Men, but she was already working for Shaw. She outright refused, the professor replied as he stretched his arms. I had my own reasons, Emma said, her voice clipped. Don't we all? The professor mused. So, how can I help you? I want you to use Cerebro and find someone, I said as I leaned near the window. Sophia Sandoval. The professor narrowed his eyes as he thought. Is she in danger? He asked. Yup. The hand took her, probably because of her unique mutation to converse with animals. I was wondering if you could track her whereabouts. I asked. The professor looked at me for a moment before he nodded. All right. But right now, as you can see, I'm barely awake. I'm too tired to keep my eyes open. So, let's find her around noon. Till then, why don't you show Miss Emma around? Or maybe take a nap. You look like you need it too, he said. I cracked my neck. Yeah, I'm sleepy all right. With all the energy spent today fighting and running, I'm deadbeat. A nap sounds good right now. But, I want to check on Jean and the others first. So, let's take Emma to my room first. All right, thanks Professor, I said as I ushered Emma out of the office. As soon as we reached my room, Emma looked around the room. You live in this hole, she said. Hey, this isn't a hole, I defended. This is cozy. Cozy? You mean cramped. This place is tiny. I shrugged as I stood at the door. Stryker blew up my house, and I haven't had the chance to buy a new one. So this will do. Anyway, sleep or walk around, I don't care. Just don't cause any trouble. It's your room for today, I said as I stepped out of the room and walked toward Jean's room. Jean's gonna be fine. But if I were a bit late, she might have gone berserk and possibly killed everyone at the warehouse. As I reached her room, I noticed Psylocke sitting near the door on a little chair. She looked at me with a tired face. How are you doing? I asked. Well, we nearly got ourselves killed, and Jean almost went berserk. We were careless. I was careless, she replied with a dry smile, grabbing her shoulder where that sniper shot. Thanks for saving our asses. No need to thank me. I did what I had to do. How's she? Sleeping. She's gonna be fine. She just needs rest. We all need it, she replied with a sigh. You should go rest then. Don't worry, I'll take care of her, I said as I extended my hand toward her. Psylocke took my hand and stood up with a grunt. You know, I was kinda worried about you back then. That expression on your face. I thought you were going to slaughter everyone at the Hellfire Club, she said as she leaned against the wall. You didn't do that, did you? You think I'm some kind of maniac who would slaughter everyone related to Shaw? I asked, raising a brow. And before you say anything, those guys in the warehouse deserved it. You know it too. Won't argue with that. They deserved it. And once again, thanks. Shaw's offer was too good to throw away, yet you still chose to help us. Don't you want to know your true identity or the secret behind your situation? Psylocke asked, her eyes narrowing. He called you a clone. As far as my memories go, you are an orphan with ice control powers. But, I get these weird visions, you see, about us training together. So, if I were to guess, the professor messed with our memories, right? To hide you, the real you, from the world. Am I right? Well, no point hiding anymore. I was planning on telling you and a few others the truth eventually. The professor did it to keep me and you all safe. But as things are right now, I don't have much choice, I replied. The more you know about me, the more danger you're in. Psylocke smiled and patted my shoulder. I trust you. Tell us when you are ready. I won't pry. And don't worry about the danger. Next time, things will be different. I won't make the same mistake again. She began to walk away. Why don't we train together sometimes? I could use some pointers, I asked as she walked away. She looked over her shoulder and smirked. Sure. If you want, you know where to find me. Yeah. Get some rest, I said as she disappeared near the corner. I entered Jean's room. As I stepped quietly into Jean's room, the soft light from the morning sun filtered through her curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. She lay motionless, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, her face softened in the embrace of sleep. I stood by her bedside for a moment, watching her peaceful expression. I'm so relieved to see her all right. Maybe it's time to help her with her Phoenix Force. I took a seat in the chair by her bedside and leaned back, exhaustion finally catching up with me. And before I knew it, I had dozed off. I don't know how long I was out, but why do I feel so heavy? It's like someone or something was lying on top of me. I strained my eyes open, only to find Jean lying on my chest with her arms around my neck. Wait. I was lying on her bed? Did she? Jean. I whispered as I glanced at the table clock. It was 9 in the morning. Dang. I'm still sleepy. No response. She's sleeping like a baby. This isn't a bad feeling at all. I wrapped my arm around her waist as I stared at the ceiling. The warmth of her body pressed against mine was soothing and comforting. And I fell asleep again. The soft beeping of the clock finally jolted me awake, although I didn't feel like moving. Jean was still curled up against me, breathing peacefully, and her hair tickled my neck as it fell over my shoulder. I didn't want to break this quiet moment, but I had to check in with the professor about Sophia. Then there's Emma too. Carefully, I shifted so I wouldn't wake her, but her hand tightened around my shoulder, pulling me back down. Her voice was barely a whisper, still hazy with sleep. Don't go just yet, she murmured, nuzzling closer. Didn't know you were awake, I replied softly, brushing a few strands of hair out of her face. How are you feeling? She took a deep breath as if testing her own strength. Better, she answered, opening her eyes to meet mine. You know, that power inside me, Phoenix. She talked to me today. Really? What did she say? She said she wants to protect me. And you. That's good, I guess, I said as I ran my hand through her hair. But why me? Because you have a part of her in you and your body is special. It can contain and control the Phoenix Force without any drawback like me. That's what she said anyway, Jean replied as she propped up on her elbow, looking into my eyes as she sat on my waist, and, ahem. Never mind. She was about to say something, but she averted her eyes. What's wrong? I asked as I brushed her cheek with my thumb. You know you can tell me anything, right? She sighed and looked at me. Promise to not get any weird ideas, she said. I promise, I said with a chuckle. All right. She took a deep breath. Phoenix told me to have a baby with you. My mind went blank. That Phoenix. Don't tell me it brought me on the bed and even put her over me to spice things up? You all right? Say something, Jean said after a while. I blinked, still processing her words. Wow. That's, unexpected, I managed, scratching the back of my neck. So the Phoenix has opinions on our personal life now? Jean bit her lip, clearly embarrassed. Believe me, I didn't ask her. She just suggested it. Said something about strengthening the cosmic bond, or whatever. She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her amusement. Honestly, she sounded like a meddling grandmother. I laughed, shaking my head. Just what I need, a cosmic entity playing matchmaker. I met her gaze, trying to sound as serious as possible. Are we supposed to, put this on the to-do list, or? She smacked my shoulder lightly, cheeks pink. Stop it. It's not a demand, more like a suggestion. She sighed, looking away. I just thought you should know. No pressure or anything. Yeah, no pressure at all, I said, grinning. Just that the literal embodiment of cosmic fire thinks we should start a family. Totally normal stuff. She couldn't hold back a laugh, finally letting the tension break. This is our life now, huh? Crazy missions, dodging death, and Phoenix giving us advice. Hey, it's all part of the package deal, I said, shrugging. Can you imagine? A little us, running around, throwing ice beams, or cosmic fire tantrums. We'd have to put baby-proof locks on every part of the galaxy. Who knows, they might just save the world by the time they're in preschool. She laughed, a genuine carefree sound that made everything feel normal. You're impossible. And you still love me anyway. I shrugged. She sighed, resting her head on my shoulder again, her fingers tracing light circles on my chest. I do, more than I care to admit. Maybe the Phoenix isn't so wrong. We lay there in comfortable silence, letting the morning light fill the room. She nuzzled on my neck. Maybe one day, when we're ready, she whispered, kissing my cheek. Yeah, one day, I murmured, kissing her head. Eventually, reality nudged its way back in, and I sighed. All right, I should probably get going. And you? I flipped her over and went on top of her, pinning her down and kissing her deeply. Should take a nice long bath and eat something. It's already noon. I'm kinda hungry, she wrapped her arms around my neck. But I don't want to let go of you yet. I kissed her nose, smiling. I don't want to go too, but gotta help out a new friend. So, how about we continue this, maybe at a later date? You know, another date without getting attacked or any interruption. That would be nice, she said. How about next Saturday night? I'll make dinner. Oh, that sounds amazing. I'm in. Definitely. But can you cook? I asked with a smirk. TSK. You gotta hurt where it hurts. She gave me a small pout. How about we cook together? You wearing an apron in the kitchen and me guiding you? I said, giving her a sly look. Only apron. Jean asked with a smirk, raising an eyebrow. Well, if you insist. I said. She laughed, kissing me softly. Ha ha ha. You are impossible. I try my best, I said, chuckling. All right. I'm off to work. I kissed her one last time before getting up. As I left Jean's room, I could still feel the warmth of her touch lingering on my skin, a small smile tugging at my lips as I replayed the morning's events. But now, it was time to get back to business. I had someone to find, and the professor had promised to help. The clock read a little past noon, which meant the professor should be rested and ready. When I reached Cerebro's control room, Hank was already there, adjusting the machine's settings. Emma stood nearby, her arms folded, looking unimpressed by the tech-heavy surroundings. Good you're here, Professor X said as I entered. He looked more awake now, though there was still a hint of fatigue in his eyes. Hank and I have made some adjustments to Cerebro. Time to find our new friend. He settled into Cerebro's central console, his fingers lightly touching the controls. The door closed and the large circular room hummed to life as Cerebro activated, the faint blue light casting a calm but eerie glow across the metallic surfaces. Professor placed the helmet on his head, closing his eyes. Let's begin. I stood by Emma, who watched with an unreadable expression. This was my first time seeing Cerebro in action, and I couldn't deny feeling a rush of awe as Professor's consciousness expanded, reaching beyond the confines of the room, far beyond the school. The view around us changed. It was as if we were standing on top of a mountain and looking down at the endless world around us. There were white little human shapes all over the place. These are humans, the professor said, pointing at the countless little shapes. Then the white shapes disappeared and red shapes appeared. And these are mutants. That many. I couldn't help asking. Yes, the professor said. We are not as alone as one might think. Well, let's see where our animal talker friend is hiding. The view continued to change as he scanned all over the world. It was as if he was reading a book and flipping through pages. It was a mesmerizing sight to behold, and it also brought to light how powerful the professor really was with the Cerebro. If he wanted to, he could do a lot of things to the human race and even wipe them out. Well, he almost did in the movies. Gotta keep an eye out for trouble in the future. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Professor's eyelids fluttered, and he let out a sharp breath. "I found her," he said, his voice low and grave. "She's on the outskirts of Tokyo, heavily guarded." The view changed and was now focused on a young girl, sitting in a dark room, all alone. Her face was devoid of any emotion, and she just sat there, motionless and silent. Hank cursed under his breath. I had to agree. This was not something I had expected. The girl didn't look older than 20, and her eyes had already lost their light. Her arms were riddled with scars. Her muscles looked like that of a seasoned fighter. What the hell did those people do to her? They turned her into a weapon, Emma said, her voice laced with barely contained anger. An emotionless, killing machine. Her mind is clouded. Drugs and brainwashed. I cannot get into her head. Some kind of tech is blocking me. Professor X said as he shut down the Cerebro and took off the helmet. He turned to Emma. There isn't much time. We need to rescue her before her mind gets permanently damaged. Emma nodded, looking determined. I'll go. No, Professor said, shaking his head. Not alone. They must have technology to suppress mutants. He looked toward me. You knew? I asked. Jean told me, he said. I opened my palm, summoning a tiny bit of Phoenix flames. No technology can suppress Phoenix force. I'll go. There are hundreds of assassins in there. And since it's Tokyo we are talking about, Hank said, the Yakuza is very powerful there. Getting caught would be bad for us all. You saw there are many mutants in there, right? You are going to need some extra help, and I know just the right person, the professor said with a smile. Hank, call Director Fury and ask for Mississippi. Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff? Emma asked, looking at the professor. Yes, the professor nodded. If there is anyone who can infiltrate a Yakuza hideout without raising an alarm, it's her. If there is any technology that blocks mutants, then she should be able to disable them from inside and create a distraction long enough for you to rescue Chat. It's going to be a fast operation. No sidetracking, no distraction, no useless killing. He looked sternly at Emma. Are you fine with that? She shrugged. As long as she's safe. It's fine by me. 4 hours later, we were aboard a black jet flying toward Tokyo. By we, I mean Emma, Storm, Blink, Natasha, and me. And I took this chance to absorb Blink's power with a simple handshake. Now, I should be able to use her portal power. Natasha didn't waste time, jumping right into the plan as soon as we were all on board. She had a tablet in her hands, displaying schematics of a large, heavily fortified building. All right, listen up, she began, her voice steady and calm. There has been a slight change of plans. After rescuing your friend, we're taking them down for good. My contact on the inside has been destabilizing Bakuto's organization for months now, and with our help, we can eliminate his hold completely. Emma leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. And your contact, we can trust them? Natasha nodded. Completely. He's been working undercover, gathering intel, sabotaging their operations from within. But he's reached his limit. Bakuto found out about a snitch and he's investigating. A thorough cleanup, you can say. He's planning on killing them all. Blink asked, eyes wide. That's not good, Storm mumbled. Yes, Natasha said. So we have a limited window of opportunity. If they find out he's been helping us, he won't live long enough to see the day. So, he had to go radio silent. There's no way to contact him at all. We are on our own, but before he went silent, he sent me all the important information maps, including the current location of their subbases, the location of mutation dampeners, and their leader's personal schedule. She tapped the screen, zooming in on a specific part of the building. Bakuto's keeping your friend and many other brainwashed mutants and humans here. She's heavily guarded, which means there'll be a lot of traps and guards. That's where Blink and Storm comes in, she glanced at the two women. You want them to attack the subbases to create a diversion. That way, he won't have a choice to pull the guards from the main base for support. And with Blink's portal, they should be able to attack multiple bases with ease. Bakuto's forces would be spread thin and confused. Their entire focus should be on the chaos outside, I said as I looked toward Natasha. That should give your contact and you enough time to disable the techs. Then I'll go in and get her out within the blink of an eye. After that, I'll leave Bakuto to Emma. I'm pretty sure she would like to have a great chat with him. You bet, Emma said with a cold glare. I could see it in her eyes. She can't wait to tear him apart limb by limb. Have we met before? Natasha asked as she narrowed her eyes at me. Your voice. It sounds familiar. I gave her a small smile. It's a big world. I'm pretty sure she knows that I saved her, but back then, and not probably pretending to not know me. Well, it's exactly as you said. So Blink and Storm, you better get started on your part, Natasha said, looking at the two. Blink opened a portal. Be careful, she said as she and Storm went through it. The portal closed behind them. Third-person POV Blink and Storm emerged from the portal into Tokyo's dim, rain-drenched night. It was an old abandoned warehouse, and as usual, the bad guys always chose a hidden place to do their evil shit. Storm lifted her arms, her eyes flashing a blinding white as she summoned a violent downpour. Thunder cracked like artillery fire, and rain hammered down, reducing visibility to nearly zero, plus the added fog. Let's give them a real taste of chaos, she whispered, unleashing a hail of lightning bolts that blasted through the mist like piercing spears. Each bolt hit with pinpoint accuracy, slamming into power generators, rooftops, and anything remotely combustible. A transformer exploded, sending a shockwave that rattled the entire block, the crackling lights plunging into darkness before emergency lights flickered to life. Guards were now scrambling in all directions, slipping in the slick, rain-slicked ground, shouting orders drowned out by the storm's fury. Blink took this advantage and used her portals to confuse the guards even more. She teleported a few of them to another base and some to the nearest shield's base. The rest were running around screaming and confused. Let's go to the next one, Storm smirked. Blink opened the portal, and Storm followed her through. They stepped out onto the rooftop of another subbase. Storm wasted no time. She called on the winds, stirring them into a fierce tempest around the building. The storm howled, shattering windows and tossing debris into the air like deadly shrapnel. Guards ducked and scrambled, shielding their faces from the stinging rain and flying shards. Blink did what she did best and repeated the process of confusing and scattering the confused thugs. Aaron's first-person POV. Inside the jet, we watched the chaos through a live feed. Looks like they're doing their part, Natasha said, turning to me. They're hitting the subbases hard, and it'll only be a matter of time before Bakuto gets desperate. Emma leaned back in her seat, her fingers tapping rhythmically against her armrest. Perfect. And after they attacked a few more subbases, Bakuto finally lost his patience and he didn't have any other choice. He sent around 60% of his remaining forces to deal with the problem, leaving only 40% to guard the main building. Natasha put the jet on autopilot, allowing the AI to take over. We have arrived at our destination. She was about to wear her parachute. Why wear that when I can just teleport you outside the building? I said, extending my right hand toward her. She glanced down at my hand before she let out a sigh. I heard about you. So, you can also teleport? That's very handy, she smiled as she held my hand. What about me? Emma said. She clearly wants to kick some asses. Have some faith in us and just stay inside. I promised, didn't I? I'll bring chat safely to you and you gotta be prepared to heal her mind. So sit tight, I said, and we vanished from the jet, reappearing in a few blocks away from the main base. Natasha activated her skin-tight nano suit. The nanites spread over her body. Dang. She looks hot. It was you back then, right? She asked as she deployed the micro-drones. Why ask if you already know that? I smirked. Actually, I didn't know that until I heard your voice today, she replied, checking the small screen on her arm. It looked like a scanner of some sort. Haven't got the chance to investigate due to my busy schedule. You haven't taken a break since then? I asked. No. Caught Hammerhead and a few of his crew and came here right after, she replied, looking up at the tall building in front of us. Looks like we got some advanced weapons and armored guards. Turrets and laser tripwires are also installed on every floor. Oh, there are also motion sensors and hidden cameras. Wow. You really need a break, I said as I looked at the tiny screen. It was all dots and numbers. Says the guy who took down Stryker and Shaw within a month, she said with a chuckle. And here you said, you didn't investigate me, I said, giving her a side glance. Well, I didn't but my friends did, she smirked. Anyway, sit tight. I'll give you the signal when the dampeners are down. You rescue the girl. She activated the invisible mode and disappeared before my eyes. "Be careful," I muttered. I tried to use my telepathy and check things out my way, and this will give me a rough idea about how powerful these power dampeners are. So I teleported high in the sky and used my ice power to stand on the thin ice sheets. It's like standing in the air. Since I'm a few blocks away from the building, the tech didn't affect me. But as I extended my telepathy, it was like trying to extend an invisible arm into a wall of solid metal. The power dampeners were strong. My power stopped to approximate 100 meters away from the building. It's up to Natasha and her contact to disable those nasty techs. The drainage tunnel was narrow, dark, and rancid with a stench of stagnant water and decay. Natasha was used to moving through unpleasant conditions, but even she had to grit her teeth against the filth clinging to her skin-tight nano suit as she slithered forward. She activated her night vision, scanning ahead for any security measures hidden within the tunnels. This was Bakuto's main facility. She wasn't expecting a straightforward infiltration. Ahead, she spotted the faint glint of a motion sensor tucked between rusted pipes. Natasha froze, letting the scanner on her wrist interface with the sensor's frequency. A few seconds later, she scrambled its signal, temporarily disabling it as she slipped by. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the pressure of the mission. Time was against them, and every step counted. After a few more grueling minutes, she reached a maintenance hatch leading into the building's lower level. She pushed it open just enough to peer into the dim corridor beyond. The guard rotations were as tight as she'd anticipated. Guards patrolled with military precision, making rounds every 30 seconds. She waited until they moved out of view before slipping through the hatch and flattening herself against the wall. Every step felt like an intricate dance with danger. She sidestepped a laser tripwire barely visible under the corridor's faint emergency lights, moving in rhythm with the mechanical whirs and footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. Her destination was 2 floors above, a security room where the nullifier control panels were likely stationed. The hallway ended at a ventilation shaft. Natasha pried the grate open silently and slid into the narrow metal tunnel. She crawled upward, careful not to make any noise. Just as she neared the shaft's exit, she heard muffled voices below. "Thinks there's a rat among us, huh? Bakuto's furious. He's not wrong. I heard they found something yesterday in storage. They're skinning him alive, I swear." A shiver ran down Natasha's spine, and she clenched her fists, staying low. If they'd caught her contact. Pushing the thought aside, she focused on the plan. The control room was just ahead. She edged out of the vent and into the shadows of the empty corridor, moving swiftly to the door. Once there, Natasha crouched beside the control panel, examining the access lock. "Guess it's time to improvise," she murmured. Using her multi-tool, she bypassed the keypad security. A small hiss announced the door unlocking. Natasha slipped in, shutting it behind her. The control room was deserted, but not for long. She estimated she had no more than 2 minutes before another guard rotation passed by. Her invisible mode has also reached its limits. It's in cooldown mode now. She glanced at the panels, her fingers flying over buttons and switches as she examined the system. A diagram of the building flickered on one of the screens, and she spotted the nodes responsible for controlling the nullifiers. She quickly deactivated one zone at a time, watching as red zones on the diagram turned green. But then, a soft thump behind her. Natasha spun around. A guard stood in the doorway, his expression one of sheer surprise. They both moved at the same time, but Natasha was faster. She lunged, catching him off guard and silencing him with a quick jab on his throat as she climbed up on his chest, and slamming down her elbow on his head with all her might. His eyes rolled back into his skull as he went limp in her arms. She dragged his body behind the control desk and resumed deactivating the nullifiers. She knew the delay had cost her precious time, but the last nullifier node was almost down. Finally, the building's dampening system was disabled, and the nullifiers went offline. She allowed herself a breath of relief, but it was short-lived as she remembered her contact. He would likely be in the holding cells below. She exited the control room, creeping silently through the dark hallways until she reached the stairwell leading to the lower levels. "Aaron," she called through the comms. "The power dampeners are down. Get chat and run." "Got it." Aaron's voice replied through her earpiece. Outside, Aaron used his super speed and phasing ability to run straight for the holding cell. As he reached the room within seconds, he saw Chat sitting in the corner, looking at nothing in particular. Her eyes were cold and emotionless. He looked around and saw many children locked up in cells. He grabbed her and took her in his arms, then used his teleportation power to teleport inside the jet. Emma quickly ran toward them. Finally, after years of searching, she finally found her friend. Sister. Chat. Emma hugged the girl tightly as tears streamed down her face. You're okay. I'm so sorry. I thought I lost you. Chat blinked a couple of times but didn't react. Bakuto's brainwashing was too strong to be broken with a simple hug. No time to cry. Aaron grabbed both Chat and Emma by their shoulders and teleported them back to Xavier School's med bay. Professor X was waiting for them in the med bay, alongside Hank. Take care of them. There are too many kids in there. I'll bring them here. Make sure to have Jean and the others ready. Some of them may be unstable. All right, go, Professor said with a nod. Leave them to us. Aaron teleported away, leaving Chat and Emma with them. Back to Natasha. The holding cells were a grim place. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a harsh glow over the rows of barred rooms where Bakuto kept his captives. Natasha's heart sank as she scanned each cell, hoping to find her contact alive. But when she reached the last cell, she stopped in horror. There he was, her contact, but only barely recognizable. His face was partially intact, enough for Natasha to identify him, but his skin was mutilated, and his body lay twisted in a pool of blood. Fury boiled within her, her fists clenching as she fought to keep her composure. I'm sorry, she whispered, feeling a fierce resolve harden in her chest. Bakuto would pay for this. Steeling herself, she pressed forward. She had a mission to complete. If she let her anger dictate her moves, she risked compromising everything. She pushed the image of her fallen contact aside and continued, gathering any intel she could from the cell's rudimentary communication console. Natasha worked quickly, accessing the rudimentary console in the holding cell. The data she needed was buried in encrypted files, but her fingers flew over the keys, bypassing firewalls and rerouting the feed to a secure shield server while copying another copy just in case. She didn't have long. The entire facility would soon be on high alert after her actions in the control room. A faint noise prickled at her senses as she was transferring the data. She stilled, her fingers hovering over the console as her keen instincts picked up on subtle movements around her. The sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor outside, accompanied by the metallic scrape of weaponry being drawn. Her heart rate slowed, a battle-honed calm descending over her. She glanced at the console screen, watching the data bar inch toward completion. 63%, 78%, 85%. It couldn't go faster. She clenched her jaw, her mind calculating escape routes as the noises grew louder. Just then, the data transfer was completed with a soft beep. Natasha exhaled and ejected the flash drive, slipping it into a hidden compartment on her belt. She rose from her crouch, her hand reaching for her stun batons just as the door slid open, and a group of assassins poured in, clad in black tactical suits with Bakuto's insignia on their chests. She had seen this kind before, elite fighters trained to execute without hesitation. Going somewhere, the lead assassin sneered, his eyes glinting with a mix of arrogance and malice. Natasha gave a slight smirk. Nope. Waiting to kick your asses. Without another word, she sprang into action, spinning low and sweeping her baton across the nearest assassin's knees, sending him crashing to the ground. The others reacted swiftly, lunging at her with a dagger, but Natasha was faster. She deflected an incoming blade with one baton, countering with a powerful strike to her assailant's temple. He dropped, unconscious before he hit the ground. The others circled, closing in like wolves on a wounded prey, but Natasha was anything but defenseless. She feinted left, then launched herself into a backflip, her legs snapping out in midair to catch two of the assassins in the face. They staggered back, and she landed on her feet, immediately ducking beneath a sweeping kick from the lead assassin. As he recovered, Natasha twisted around him, grabbing his wrist and leveraging his own weight to slam him into another attacker. Close-quarters combat was her specialty. She used it to her advantage, controlling her movements to keep her opponents colliding into each other. Her strikes were swift, every punch and kick broke their bones or tore their muscles. One by one, the assassins fell, but as she dispatched the final one, a new threat emerged. A squad of heavily armed reinforcements entered the room, their rifles raised, eyes narrowed with deadly intent. She backed up, her options narrowing as her mind raced through possibilities. End of the line, intruder, one of them said, finger tightening on the trigger. Natasha held her hands up in mock surrender, her mind ticking over an escape plan. You really think so? She taunted, casting a quick glance at the ventilation shaft above. But before anyone could move, the reinforcements froze solid just like that as the temperature dropped rapidly. Eren appeared before Natasha and stopped his super speed. I took out all the kids. And found Bakuto's location. Bastard hiding in the underground chamber. So, you ready to kick some asses? He asked while looking at the frozen soldiers. You bet I am. She cracked her neck. Let's go. Eren nodded and teleported both of them to the underground chamber. Should I kill them at once? Eren asked. He saw what they did down there in the cells and those poor kids being brainwashed to become soldiers of the hand. He just wanted to kill them all, painfully. They killed my contact. I need you to leave some for me, Natasha said, clenching her fists. Will do. Just be careful. He summoned the Phoenix Flames. The metal hissed as his Phoenix Flames melted through the blast door, spilling molten steel onto the floor in fiery rivulets. The chamber beyond was wide and dim, with only flickering lights casting shadows over the grim scene. Waiting for them, a line of Bakuto's mutants stood with hardened, brutal faces, eyes gleaming with the madness of Bakuto's ruthless indoctrination. At the end of the room, Bakuto himself watched with cold satisfaction, encased behind a barrier like a predator waiting for his prey to exhaust themselves. Welcome, Natasha, Bakuto called out with a mocking grin. And your friend. I've been waiting. This is as far as you go. Eren's face hardened, his fists clenching as the Phoenix Flames around him flared brighter. We're finishing this, he murmured, voice cold with deadly resolve. At once, the mutants lunged forward, a vicious snarl tearing from their ranks as they charged. Eren's eyes narrowed, and in an instant, he vanished in a burst of flames, his form phasing through their strikes. He reappeared behind a hulking mutant with thick, scaly skin, his hand seizing the man's shoulder. Without hesitation, Eren released a blaze of phoenix fire, igniting the mutant from the inside out. Die, bastard! The man's skin bubbled up, flesh melting away as he screamed. Arg! His body collapsed in a smoking heap on the floor. Natasha was already on the move, weaving through the fray with deadly precision. A mutant with blade-like arms swung at her, his attack swift and lethal, aiming to gut her on the spot. She ducked beneath his swing, bringing her knee up to shatter his ribcage with a sickening crunch. As he gasped, Natasha seized his head, twisting it with a brutal snap that sent him to the ground, his limbs twitching in death's final throes. Two more mutants came at her, their fists and claws aimed to tear her apart. Natasha slipped between them, dropping a flash bomb as she darted past. The blinding light disoriented them, and she wasted no time, driving her baton into one's eye, feeling the satisfying squelch as it sank deep. He screamed, blood and fluid spurting down his face, and she wrenched the baton free, kicking him in the gut so he fell back into his companion. Meanwhile, Eren tore through his opponents like a living inferno. He grabbed one by the throat, his phoenix flame spreading to engulf the mutant's body, skin and bone alike charring and melting in seconds. The stench of burning flesh filled the air, and Eren threw the lifeless husk aside, his eyes locking on his next target. A speedster tried to dart behind him, but Eren phased out and reappeared mid-strike, plunging his hand into the man's chest. Using speed against me? A bad move. Blood sprayed as he ripped out the mutant's heart, crushing it in his fist before dropping it onto the floor. Natasha dodged a swipe from a mutant with metal claws, sidestepping his attack before slamming her baton into the back of his skull. The blow cracked bone, and as he staggered, she quickly grabbed his arm, twisting it until it snapped. You damn bitch. His howl was cut short when she drove her elbow into his face, shattering his jaw and sending teeth scattering across the blood-slick floor. Another mutant with spiked knuckles closed in, jabbing toward Eren's gut. Eren didn't flinch, catching the mutant's arm mid-punch. The phoenix flames around his hand grew hotter, turning the mutant's skin black as it seared through muscle and bone. With a grunt, Eren twisted the charred limb clean off, hurling it aside before sweeping the mutant's legs and sending him sprawling. He raised his foot, stomping down on the mutant's skull, bones splintering under the force. Blood pooled around his foot as he stepped forward, leaving the crumpled remains behind. Natasha turned, only to be caught by a mutant's fist slamming into her shoulder. She winced, feeling the bone crack, but channeled the pain without even screaming in pain. Dodging his next attack and countering with a knife drawn from her belt, she stabbed it into his gut, twisting the blade, ripping through muscle and organ. Humph! She yanked the knife out, blood spraying across her suit, then slashed his throat in a single swift stroke. Cug! He gurgled, clutching at his neck as he fell to his knees before collapsing in a bloody heap. Only a few mutants remained, and they faltered, their confidence shaken as they watched their allies slaughtered in moments. Eren didn't wait, leaping forward with a feral snarl, his flames scorching the floor as he reached them. One mutant tried to run, but Eren caught him by the hair, yanking him back and forcing his head back to stare into his eyes. Leaving so soon? Eren sneered. With a surge of phoenix energy, he incinerated the mutant's face, leaving nothing but a charred skull as the body fell limp. The last remaining mutant backed away, but Natasha was on him in an instant. She drove her fist into his face, feeling his nose break under her knuckles, and then drove her knee into his groin. He doubled over, and she seized his head, slamming it repeatedly into the floor until it was nothing more than a bloody mess beneath her hands. The room fell silent, broken only by Bakuto's slow, mocking clap as he stepped from behind his barrier. Impressive, Natasha. And your pet flame. But you're still out of your league. He gestured, and a hulking figure emerged from the shadows, a mutant covered in grotesque, jagged stone, each footstep a rumbling tremor. His arms were made of metal and large claws on his fingertips. From the looks of it, that guy was a lab-made mutant. Well, Eren looked toward Natasha. That's the guy who killed your contact. He extended his arm toward her. Let me give you a little gift. Natasha nodded and took his arm. She was surprised to feel the sudden surge of foreign power. She felt strong. Then memories surged into her mind, letting her know how to use the power. It was the Shaw's power. Thank you. She gave him a nod and moved forward. Bakuto smirked, gesturing for his behemoth to attack. Kill them. The mutant thundered forward, swinging his claws, his strike so powerful that it cracked the concrete beneath his feet. Upon coming in contact with Natasha, the attack was nullified as she absorbed the energy with Shaw's power. What? He stared at her in shock. Natasha walked in and flicked his forehead with her finger. Bam! The giant flew across the room, crashing into the energy barrier. But he was quite sturdy, and he immediately got back up to his feet. Then he charged at Natasha like a freaking truck. However, she stopped him with just a single finger, absorbing the kinetic energy. Damn you! The giant yelled in rage and began to throw rapid punches and slashed at a blinding speed. However, they were all absorbed by Natasha's power. Why won't you bitch just die? He yelled before opening his mouth and throwing an energy blast at her from point blank. But she again absorbed it with Shaw's power. What are you? Without waiting any more time and words, Natasha placed her palm on the giant's chest, pushing all the absorbed energy into him. The giant exploded, blood splattering everywhere. Well, that was something. Eren walked toward her. Natasha huffed in exhaustion. A regular human using mutant power, although it was untested before. But it worked. Now both of them glared at Bakuto, who was all alone now. Eren's first-person POV. It's been 3 days since we caught Bakuto and destroyed a major faction of the Hand. As promised, I gave Bakuto to Emma and she gave me the information I wanted to know. She gave me the location of Shaw's lab where my original body was kept. She never interfered with the experiments personally, but has spies everywhere. According to those spies, Shaw and Dr. Nathaniel Essex found something while digging into an ancient city buried under the icy North Pole. There they found a stasis pod with a human without a face, no eyes or nose, just skin covering his face. The only thing was his mouth. It was closed with a weird mask. So those two began experimenting on that being and eventually managed to extract his DNA and create multiple clones, but all failed. So they went back to the site and dug more. After months of digging and searching, they found another sealed pod. That's all the spies could find. Shit. A guy without a face. That's all for one. I'm gonna kill that bastard before he regains his power. Oh, as for what happened to Chat. Well, the professor managed to clear her clouded mind and bring her back. But there was a catch. Chat doesn't remember anything that happened after she was kidnapped. To her, it was like yesterday when they took her. That's a good thing, right? She won't have to deal with the dark memories and those tortures. This way, she could live a normal life again. and she could now properly learn to master her power of conversing with the animals. As for Natasha, she promised to swing by after dealing with the remnants of Bakuto's faction. Although we took down almost all of their outposts and bases, the Shield discovered a few more bases in New York. So, she'll be busy for a couple of days. What am I doing right now, you may ask? I'm standing before that base. No point wasting any more time. I'm gonna kill that freak of nature and Mr. Sinister today if they are here. Yup. Despite promising Jean and Kitty to not take any high risk, I still came alone. I couldn't possibly put them in danger. I mean, forget Mr. Sinister, there's All for One in there. There was no freaking way I was gonna put my girls in danger. Arctic Base. I stood on the icy cliffside overlooking the base. The cold didn't bother me, not anymore, not with the ice power. This was it. The end game. Just one more push and I'd have my peace back, at least for a few months. I teleported inside the outer walls and hid behind a stack of crates. Machines whirred and hissed from within, and a hum of voices echoed down sterile corridors, but I kept silent, moving carefully. I extended my telepathic reach, probing for any guards stationed nearby. As my senses spread through the facility, I picked up on a lone guard's thoughts, mere steps away, grumbling about the frigid air as he patrolled down the hall. Perfect. I focused on his mind, implanting a subtle suggestion. Go check the storage room. Almost immediately, I felt his mind yield, and he turned toward the storage room. I slipped in behind him, moving soundlessly as he stepped in, scanning the dim space. Before he could react, I struck a quick blow to the back of his neck. He crumpled silently onto the floor. Using Azazel's power, I took on his appearance, feeling the change ripple through my skin as I adjusted my features, skin, and stance to perfectly mirror the guards. Then I changed into his clothes. With that done, I used my phasing power to bury that guy in the ground. I left the storage room and blended into the flow of workers and guards navigating the base. This place was huge, multiple corridors lined with thick metallic doors and high ceilings, dotted with cameras. Rows of machinery whirred non-stop, and each worker was too focused on their task to notice the new face among them. As I moved, I noticed occasional markers on doors and walls, scientific symbols, hazard signs, and strangely coded identification numbers. The lab must be nearby. I rounded a corner and came to a large reinforced door marked with a biohazard warning. My instincts told me I was getting close. Stretching out my telepathy, I caught snippets of conversation from behind the door. Scientists discussing Project Genesis and Specimen Zero in hushed, fearful tones. According to their memories, Specimen Zero is the faceless guy. Checking the corridor for any wandering guards, I phased through the door. Inside, the air was thick with chemicals, and the room reeked of sterile antiseptic. Vials, charts, and strange equipment lined the walls. But more importantly, the monitors showed a view of the lower levels, the heart of the lab. In the corner, two scientists conversed, their voices low. I'm gonna need a new face if I were to go any further. I slinked into the shadows, focusing on one of them, implanting a command to head to storage and wait. As he moved away, the other looked puzzled but shrugged, turning back to his work. I teleported from corner to corner, keeping myself away from the cameras and security checkpoints. Finally, that guy entered the storage room. And just like before, I knocked him out and took his form and clothes. This one is one of the assistant doctors who has access to the main room. Mr. Sinister and All for One are in the main area. Bingo! After reading his memories, I buried him there like the first guard and walked out. Now all I gotta do is get into the main area. I took a steady breath, adjusting my posture and sliding into the assistant doctor's persona as naturally as slipping on a glove. With his memories in my mind, I knew his gait, his subtle mannerisms, even the way he liked to adjust his glasses when he thought no one was looking. Every detail mattered. The deeper I went, the more cautious I had to be. I couldn't afford a single slip-up here, especially with All for One and Mr. Sinister waiting in the main lab. The hallways twisted and turned, leading to a series of checkpoints before the main area. Each station was more complex and secure than the last. I approached the first checkpoint, a retina scanner set into the wall beside an ID verification system. Using the assistant doctor's memories, I guided his eye up to the scanner, focusing on a level of calm that belied the racing heartbeat beneath. The light flickered, scanned, and granted me access with a faint beep. I pushed the door open, stepping into a corridor where two guards stood on either side, armed and watchful. One of them nodded, glancing at my face. "Dr. Ramsey, forgot your badge again?" "Ah. This guy always forgets the secondary badge. And these guards always try to get along with the higher-ups to get some extra break or food." I forced a chuckle, mirroring the assistant's relaxed body language as best as I could. "Yeah, you know me. I swear it's just nerves from handling the latest batch of specimens. You think I'd get used to it by now?" The guard snorted, nodding in sympathy. "Happens to the best of us." "No worries, Doctor." He swiped his own badge across a secondary panel, allowing me through. "Tell you what, I got a new batch of wine coming in this Sunday, and I need 2 veterans to bring the crate to my office. Maybe if they do a good job, I might give them a bottle or 2, I said with a nod. "Leave it to us," one of the guards said with a smile. "I'll see you on Sunday." I passed through and kept my pace steady, walking past rows of doors labeled with cryptic symbols and codes that even my borrowed memories couldn't fully decipher. The second checkpoint was just ahead, a checkpoint guarded by a more advanced scanner that would require a voice confirmation. One of the techs ahead of me was having trouble with his code, stammering as the guard looked on, impatient. I forced myself to watch, absorbing the guard's irritation and noting the way the tech had faltered under pressure. One wrong vocal tone, and they were immediately suspicious. So I leaned into the memories I'd gleaned from Dr. Ramsey, finding the exact vocal cadence and passphrase he used. When it was my turn, I stepped up confidently. "Assistant Dr. Ramsey, Level 3 access clearance, requesting admittance to the lower lab," I said, hitting the notes of authority and familiarity I knew Ramsey would have in this situation. The guard scanned my face, his expression impassive, then nodded curtly and waved me through. I moved on, but my nerves hummed as I drew closer to the lab's heart. The main area, as Ramsey's memories called it, was hidden behind one last intricate security measure, a full body scanner that was rumored to detect anything from DNA mismatches to synthetic biological traces. It was installed to prevent intruders from using shape-shifting or holographic disguises. Some might wonder, why not use superspeed and phasing to go in straight or teleport inside? Well, I can't. Although Emma's spies disabled the outer nullifiers, the security measures in this room are different. The direct control is in Mr. Sinister's hands, and that freaking wall has integrated nullifiers. In short, mutation won't work. But I almost forgot that mutant scanners don't work on me. So, getting in would be a piece of cake, hopefully. If things go south, I'll simply burn this place down to ashes. I stepped into the chamber. The door sealed behind me, the scanner whirring to life, bathing me in its cold blue light. As the beams traced up and down, I forced myself to remain perfectly still, exuding the calm confidence of the assistant doctor I was impersonating. The scanner's lights flickered, then shut off with a click. I'd passed. Stepping forward, I emerged on the other side, greeted by a vast, sterile lab. The walls were lined with intricate machinery, towering containment units, and glass-walled observation chambers that stretched out in a perfect, pristine arrangement. The lab's cold, clinical atmosphere seeped into me, its silence like a coiled snake ready to strike. Just ahead, across the polished floor and behind a thick wall of reinforced glass, I saw them. I could see them, Mr. Sinister, tall and imposing with that piercing inhuman gaze, his suit of dark armor glinting under the sterile lab lights. Next to him, in a sealed containment pod, was All for One, or rather the remnants of him. He was just as Emma had described, a faceless, blank mask of flesh with only a closed, metal-bound mouth visible. The sight of him sent a shiver down my spine. That guy is freaking dangerous. Sinister gestured at a nearby monitor showing a long, complex genetic sequence to another doctor, the likely result of their years of experiments with the faceless specimen. The pod All for One was seen to pulse faintly with a life support system, a tangle of wires and tubes feeding into his body to keep him stable. I noted the meticulous design of everything around them. Every pod, every piece of equipment screamed of Sinister's obsessive attention to detail. I stayed in the shadows, keeping my borrowed face and stance relaxed to avoid arousing suspicion from any guards who might glance my way. I glanced around for the quickest way to disable the pod or, better yet, destroy it entirely. No amount of Sinister's expertise or twisted science would revive him if he was vaporized into nothing. I picked up a datapad from the nearby table and began walking toward Sinister, doing my best to look like just another assistant handling routine lab work. I kept my steps steady, my face calm, channeling every ounce of the assistant doctor's confidence from his memories. Sinister's back was to me, engrossed in the swirling display of genetic data, unaware of the phoenix flames gathering silently around my hand as I held the datapad in front of me. The other scientists didn't even glance my way. They were too busy working under Sinister's tyrannical supervision to notice another assistant approaching. I could feel the heat of the phoenix flames beneath my skin, just waiting for my signal. One shot, one strike. I just had to get close enough. As I reached his side, Sinister finally glanced over, perhaps to instruct me on whatever monotonous task he thought I was here for. His face was calm, almost bored, as he looked at me, his sharp eyes not sensing the storm about to strike. He barely opened his mouth before I moved. With a nice smile, I drove my fist straight into his chest, unleashing the phoenix flames. The flames erupted from my hand, burning through layers of flesh and armor like they were paper. His expression shifted instantly from boredom to shock and pain as the fire burned through his body, his scream filling the lab. Arg! Mr. Sinister screamed in pain. The scientists and guards turned, their eyes wide with horror, but it was too late. Sinister's body convulsed, writhing against the grip of the phoenix flames as I twisted my fist, ensuring every inch of his insides was charred beyond recovery. The flames ate through him mercilessly, disintegrating him from the inside out. His screams faded to a whimper as he collapsed into a smoldering pile of ash at my feet. That bastard is dead. I glanced around, the flames still burning in my hand as the guards began to reach for their weapons. But before they could move, I raised my hand, sending a wave of phoenix flames crashing toward the closest ones. The fire roared across the room, engulfing them in an instant, and I could hear their panicked screams fade as they disappeared in the blaze. All for One's pod hummed, still intact behind the glass wall. He was sealed within, powerless for now. I approached the console and typed in a command, locking the lab doors to trap any remaining staff. The lab was in chaos, people shouting, the alarms blaring, but nothing was going to stop me now. I approached the containment pod, the faint pulses of All for One's life support flickering on the monitors beside it. The pod seemed to radiate an oppressive aura, even in its dormant state. I took a deep breath, letting the phoenix flames roar even brighter around my hands. Not today, I murmured. Instantly, the pod exploded outward, shards of glass and metal scattering as an intense, dark energy burst free. I barely had time to throw up a barrier of phoenix flames to shield myself as the blast radiated outward, filling the lab with an overwhelming force that tore everything apart. The machines crumpled like paper, walls disintegrated, and the entire structure shuddered under the weight of All for One's raw power. When the shockwave finally dissipated, the world had transformed into a desolate, silent white landscape. Snow blanketed the ground, covering every trace of the lab, the machinery, the guards. There was nothing left but a cold, barren wasteland. And there, in the midst of the snow, stood All for One. I could feel the weight of his presence pressing against me, a horrifying blend of twisted malice and unimaginable strength. He took off his mask and smiled. But he's still injured. I could feel his life force waning. He chuckled softly, his voice a dark, rumbling echo that seemed to vibrate through the air. Well, the phoenix itself has come to greet me. How quaint. I met his gaze, flames still dancing around my hands, defiant in the face of his power. You should have stayed dead, I said, letting the phoenix flames intensify until they glowed like molten lava. All for One's expression shifted. And missed the opportunity to devour the very flames of rebirth? I think not. With a flick of his hand, dark tendrils of energy lashed out, clawing toward me. I unleashed a wave of phoenix flames, meeting his dark energy head-on. The impact shook the very ground beneath us, sending waves of fire and darkness rippling through the snowy wasteland. We clashed, flames roaring against shadow, each force vying to consume the other. I could tell that the dark energy radiating from that freak was the power of decay. Your power. It's magnificent. To think that clone could withhold such power. All for One sneered. Doctor really outdid himself. Well, I'll take what's mine now, thank you. I don't think so. I unleashed a towering pillar of fire that spiraled toward him. The flames morphed, transforming into a phoenix-shaped blaze that soared toward All for One, its fiery wings stretching wide. The heat scorched the very air, and even he flinched as it bore down on him, engulfing him in the heart of its flames. But All for One teleported behind me and was about to grab me. This is your end. I decided to stop suppressing the Phoenix Force. Instantly, a burst of flames erupted, pushing him back. I could feel it. The limitless power of the cosmos. I could see the life force around me clearly. It's hard to explain, but everything was clear, and I could see every minute detail and the flow of energy around me. Then came the torrent of information on how to use the real power of the Phoenix Force in my mind. It was as if the Phoenix itself was guiding me. The Phoenix Flame is a cosmic entity, after all. And I am the Phoenix, the physical representation of the Phoenix Force. And this man. This freak is just a bug. Bastard. All for One yelled, releasing a massive gravity pressure around the place. I'll crush your body if I had to. Ha ha ha. I couldn't help but laugh at this bug's pathetic attempt to crush me. The gravity pressure of this level. What a joke. I can do that with my pinky. What's so funny? All for One was furious. He increased the intensity of the gravity pressure. You are already dead, I said, pointing my finger toward him. Disintegration ray. An intense beam of golden light erupted from my hand, vaporizing everything in its path. The ray tore through the snowy wasteland, obliterating the very ground beneath it. And finally, it struck All for One, incinerating him in an instant. His body turned into golden dust in the air. I watched the dust float away in the wind, the weight of his presence fading from the area. That was easier than I thought. That guy is such a joke. He's no match for me. I clenched my fist and then released it. This new power is incredible. It felt like I could take on anything. But just to be sure, I used Phoenix Force to scan the surroundings. All for One's life force really did disappear. That bastard is dead. Phew, I sighed in relief. This power is a freaking cheat. Jean struggled so much just to use a tiny portion of it, and look at me now. I was overpowered beyond words. Anyway, I killed major enemies in less than 2 months or so. Stryker, Shaw, Sinister, and All for One. Now, all I need is that data drive in Black Cat's hand. I just had to make sure that they don't have any cloned shit and all that. Besides, I'm curious to know what's in that drive. Well, time to go back. Death's Realm. Lady Death's domain was a place of endless void, a dark expanse that stretched beyond the limits of time and space. The very air was cold and still, filled with whispers of lost souls. Shadows shifted endlessly, and the fabric of reality seemed to fray at the edges. Here she reigned supreme, watching the delicate dance between life and death with a detached curiosity. Among the countless souls she had watched pass into nothingness, one stood out. A man who refused to be claimed by her grasp time and time again. This mortal was different. His name was Aaron, and he had a knack for cheating death in ways that should have been impossible. Lady Death found herself amused by his antics, watching him destroy All for One with a mere flick of his power. The Phoenix Flames, a force capable of rebirth and destruction, burned brightly in his hand. It was a sight that few mortals could ever hope to wield, let alone control. Fascinating, Lady Death murmured, her voice echoing softly through the void. She watched his every move, her skeletal fingers caressing the image of Aaron floating before her. He was unlike anyone she had seen in centuries. His power, his defiance, reminded her of another, a certain mad titan who had once tried to win her favor through endless acts of destruction. Thanos, however, was predictable. He acted out of a twisted love for her, driven by an obsessive desire. But Aaron was a mystery, an unpredictable wild card that intrigued her more and more. As she watched, a dark smile spread across her face. Aaron had gained the full power of the Phoenix Force, a cosmic power capable of reshaping entire worlds. Yet despite this, he remained immortal, fragile, fleeting, and bound by the same rules as all other beings. His healing factor and the Phoenix Force granted him a semblance of immortality, but could he truly evade her realm forever? Lady Death leaned back into her cold, bone-carved throne, surrounded by swirling shadows that seemed to dance to her every whim. She decided it was time to stir things up. With a soft call, she summoned Thanos, feeling his familiar presence tug at the edges of her domain. The Mad Titan's soul or astral form appeared before her, his massive form kneeling in a show of reverence. His eyes glowed with the familiar fervor she had seen countless times, a mixture of love, madness, and desperation. "My lady," Thanos spoke, his voice filled with devotion. "I have done as you commanded. The massacre of the new Eternal City is complete. Thousands have perished, their souls delivered to your realm." Lady Death's chuckle echoed through the void. "Yes, Thanos. You have done well," she said with a slow, amused smile. But do you know why I asked for this? Thanos hesitated, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. For your amusement, my lady, he answered, his voice faltering. To prove my love, to show my lady the depths of my devotion. She cut him off with a wave of her hand, her expression growing colder. No, Thanos. It was because I was bored. Your little massacres have grown dull, predictable. But I have found a new source of entertainment. Thanos's eyes widened, disbelief and jealousy twisting his features. Another? Who could possibly hold your interest more than I? Lady Death stepped closer, the void swirling around her like a living, breathing entity. She reached out, her fingers lightly tracing the outline of Thanos's chin, forcing him to look up. With a smile that held no warmth, she gestured to the image of Aaron floating beside her. This mortal, she said softly. His name is Aaron. He has defied me more times than I can count. He wields the Phoenix Force, a power that even gods fear. Thanos's face contorted in rage, his fists clenching tightly. A human? He is nothing but a mere mortal. Ah, but he is far from ordinary, Lady Death interrupted, her eyes gleaming with amusement. He dances with forces beyond his understanding and defies death at every turn. He may very well become like me, immortal, eternal. He intrigues me, Thanos. And that is why I want you to prove your love once more. Thanos's jealousy and fury boiled over. I will destroy him, he vowed, his voice seething with hatred. How dare a mere mortal try to gain Lady Death's attention? She should look at him, and not at some random human. I will tear him apart, limb by limb, until there is nothing left. He will not take you from me. Lady Death leaned closer, her lips brushing against his ear as she whispered. Bring me his soul, Thanos. Deliver Aaron to my realm, or do not show your face to me again. If you succeed, I will grant you what you desire most. You will be allowed to worship at my feet, to serve me in ways you have always dreamed of. Thanos's eyes burned with renewed purpose, his devotion rekindled by her words. He nodded, his face twisted with a grim determination. I will not fail you, my lady. With a dismissive wave of her hand, Lady Death sent Thanos hurtling back to the physical plane. She watched him disappear into the darkness, knowing that his jealousy and obsession would drive him to hunt Aaron with every ounce of his being. It was all part of her game, a spectacle of power, ambition, and the inevitable pull of death. Turning back to the swirling image of Aaron, she smiled, watching as he stood in a snowy wasteland, his breath misting in the cold air. He was unaware of the storm brewing in the shadows, of the deadly force that now hunted him at her command. Although I can't see the strings of your fate or your death. Let's see how far you can go, Aaron, Lady Death whispered, her voice filled with anticipation. Let's see if you can truly escape me forever. Her laughter echoed through the void, a chilling sound that sent ripples through the fabric of reality itself. The game had just begun, and she was eager to watch it play out. Thanos' soul rushed back to his body, slamming into him like a bolt of dark lightning. His eyes snapped open, glowing with a furious light as he returned to the physical plane. He was back on his massive warship, the Sanctuary 2. The cold metal floor felt solid beneath his feet, but the anger boiling inside him made everything seem like a blur. Without a moment's hesitation, he grabbed the nearest guard, a small green-skinned alien. The guard barely had time to react before Thanos' massive fist smashed into his face. Thanos didn't stop. He punched again and again, his rage exploding with every strike. The alien's cries were drowned out by the sickening sounds of breaking bones and tearing flesh. Blood splattered across the metal floor, staining Thanos' hands as he turned the guard into a messy purple pulp. The other guards nearby froze, fear gripping them as they watched their master unleash his fury. None dared to move. None dared to speak. They had seen Thanos angry before, but this was different. His rage was like a wild storm, and they knew better than to get caught in its path. Finally, Thanos stopped, breathing heavily, his fists dripping with blood. He looked down at the lifeless body of the guard, but it did nothing to quench the fire burning inside him. The thought of Aaron, a mere human, occupying Lady Death's thoughts filled him with a rage he hadn't felt in centuries. Nebula! Gamera! He roared, his voice echoing through the halls of the ship. Within moments, his two adopted daughters appeared. You called, father? Gamora asked, trying to hide her unease before kneeling before him. She knew something was wrong. Nebula too could sense that something was off. Her father was not one to lose his calm easily, but his emotions were clearly visible. His face was twisted with anger, and his eyes burned with hatred. She kept her face straight, not showing any sign of emotion. She had learned early on that it was best not to show any weakness in front of Thanos. She also kneeled beside Gamora. "Father," she whispered, lowering her head. "Gamora, track down the Infinity Stones," Thanos ordered before glancing at Nebula. "Nebula, go to Earth. Find the heroes of that planet and send me their information. I've also heard that Thor is on that planet. If that information is real, then I'll kill him and start a war with Odin. I'll eradicate them all in a grand battle and give my mistress a grand spectacle. Mistress wants Aaron, and I will give his soul to her along with the entirety of Asgardians and Midgardians." 3 days had passed since I took care of Stryker, Shaw, Mr. Sinister, and All for One. With them out of the picture, I no longer have a target on my back. Still gotta keep an eye out for that Sinister creep. He must have some clones out there. Emma Frost decided to shut down the Hellfire Club's illegal activities and close the club temporarily to spend time with Chat. She wanted to end all operations, but I convinced her to keep the strip club running as a source of intel. If the government ever starts building sentinels, we'll catch wind of it early and stop them. No updates from Natasha yet, though. I hope she's all right. Oh, I almost forgot to mention that after reading so many people's minds, I have found some hidden crates of cash, weapons, and drugs. 3 days was enough to get them all. There were also some bank lockers where they were keeping their money and other illegal property papers. So, I cleared them all. Emma took care of the illegal property papers and weapons, thanks to her connections. I took the drugs and made a list of those bastards who were still running outside and gave them to Yuri. She'll take care of them. Well, we made a shit ton of money. I took 70%, Emma took 20%. She wanted to give me all, but she did the hard work, so she deserves it. As for the 10%, I donated to May Parker's orphanage through a fake name. The professor and I had a long talk about the current situation. He thinks with most major enemies gone, Magneto might make a move soon, especially since Shaw and Sinister are dead. He advised me to stay cautious, but surprisingly didn't ask about what went down at the base. All he said was to be careful and not harm anyone who doesn't deserve it. I can work with that. We also discussed healing his injuries and getting him back on his feet. I could transfer the healing factor to him, which might repair his damaged spine, but he seemed unsure. It worked on Psylocke's wounds, so it will work on him too. I could see both hope and fear in his eyes. He was worried that once the healing factor wore off, he might lose the ability to walk again. "So, have you thought about it?" I asked. "Well, yes, but..." He hesitated. "Wow, the great Professor Xavier is actually scared to take a risk," I teased. "It worked on Psylocke, so why not try it?" He sighed. "You won't let this go, will you?" "Nope," I said with a grin. The professor sighed. "Well, fine. We'll do it. I'm done with this wheelchair anyway. I won't lie, I want to run, walk, drive, you know. And maybe I could do all that again." "All right, let's do it." "That's the spirit," I said. "All right, here we go." I extended my arm toward him. He reached out his hand and touched my palm. Instantly, I transferred the healing factor to him. He took a deep breath, sitting up straight in the wheelchair. The healing factor should start working right away, so it's only a matter of time before all his wounds heal. The color returned to his face, the years of strain and suffering melting away. His spine began to straighten, muscles in his legs began twitching. He opened his eyes slowly, looking at me in disbelief and hope. "How do you feel?" I asked. He moved the wheelchair out from behind the desk into the open area, then took off his boots and moved his toes. "Ha ha ha, I can feel them," he laughed. "It is like every bone and muscle in my body is suddenly fresh and ready for anything." Before I could say anything, he pressed his hands down on the armrests of the wheelchair and pushed himself upwards, standing up. A huge smile appeared on his face as he turned to stare at me, his eyes brimming with joy. But his knees buckled and he almost fell on his face. I was about to help him, but he gritted his teeth and stopped the fall himself. "Stop. I'm all right. I need to do this myself, Aaron," he told me, sweat trickling down the side of his face as his muscles trembled while trying to hold up his body. It's been years since he walked, and even with the sudden healing, it'd take some time for him to get used to his legs again. After several deep breaths, his body became more steady. He took a few steps forward, very slowly and cautiously. His hand stretched out, and he managed to walk all the way to the end of the room, turn around and return. He stopped in front of me and sat back down on the wheelchair, panting, a wide grin plastered on his face. "This is amazing," he said. "I never thought I could walk again." "Told you it'd work," I said with a smile. I don't know how to thank you, Aaron," the professor said, still smiling like an excited child. "Well, don't get shot again, maybe? That'll be good enough for me," I suggested. He chuckled. "I'll try not to." "Oh, I almost forgot. You must have heard about our plan to go to the water park. You all right with that?" I asked. "Absolutely, you all deserve some rest," the professor replied. "Thanks, Prof," I said as I stood up. "Well, I'll see you later. And try to keep your running to a minimum. Your muscles still need to adjust, so don't overdo it." "Don't worry, I will," he said. My room. I took my laptop and lay on the bed. It was time to find a new place, something away from the mansion. After everything that went down, I needed a new house. Damn that striker bastard, destroying my peaceful life. I started browsing listings in the city, looking for a place with enough space and privacy. This time I ain't holding back the money. I'm going to buy a nice house. A penthouse might be nice, somewhere with a view. I liked the idea of having a place that felt like a sanctuary, high above the city noise but still connected to it. As I scrolled through the listings, a knock on the door interrupted me. "Come in," I said, not taking my eyes off the screen. The door opened, and Kitty and Jean stepped inside. They were both dressed casually, ready for a stroll. Kitty had a mischievous smile on her face, while Jean looked relaxed. "Well, at least my girls are doing all right and getting along." "Hey, Aaron," Kitty greeted, skipping over to my bed and flopping down. "We were thinking of taking a walk around the park. Want to join us?" I glanced up and saw them noticing the open laptop screen. Jean raised an eyebrow, and Kitty leaned in closer. "Looking for a new place?" Jean asked with a curious smile. "Yeah," I admitted. "I'm planning to buy a house in the city this time." Kitty's eyes lit up. "Ooh, are you moving into a fancy penthouse?" she asked, scooting closer to get a better look at the screen. "Look at that, it even got a big pool." "Infinity pool?" "Looks similar." "Something like that," I replied with a chuckle. Before I could say more, Kitty ditched the idea of the park walk entirely and made herself comfortable on my bed. Jean followed suit. Two girls lying on my sides, looking at the screen. "Oh boy. Here we go." "All right, we're helping you pick," Kitty declared. Jean nodded in agreement. "You two ditching your plans to help me find a house?" I asked, amused. Jean shrugged. "It's more interesting than just walking around the park. Besides, if you're going to have your own place, we want to have a say in it." "Why? Planning to live with me? 3 of us together?" I teased, chuckling. "Maybe," Kitty whispered, winking at me. "Why don't you want to live with 2 beauties in your fancy house, huh?" Jean joined in. "I mean, that would be awesome," I laughed. "All right, go on. Don't worry about the money. Pick whatever you like. But make sure the garage is big and the swimming pool is nice." Jean and Kitty giggled as they took turns picking the listings they liked. After a while, we narrowed the choices down to 3 places. "All right, Aaron, tell us which one you like," Jean asked. I hummed, looking at the screen. "This one. The other 2 are great, but this one is perfect. It's spacious, luxurious, with a beautiful view. The rooftop pool is nice too," Kitty added. 3 bedrooms and the master bedroom is kinda big too, you know what I mean?" Jean said with a sly smirk. Oh, I definitely knew what she meant. "Aha. So why don't we go and take a look?" "Good idea. Let's go now," I said as I closed my laptop. Kitty jumped off the bed. "Let's get moving then." Jean stretched her arms, standing up as well. "I'm gonna grab my jacket and meet you at the gate." Kitty and I made our way straight for the garage. "I'm going to borrow Hank's car." As we entered the garage, I noticed Hank messing with a weird motor of some kind, probably fixing it. "Oh hey, Aaron. What's up?" he greeted. "Hey Hank," I returned the greeting. "We're going out. Is it okay if I borrow your car?" "Sure thing," Hank replied, smiling. "The keys are in the car." "Thanks. See you later," I said as we walked over to the car and hopped inside. Since Jean wasn't there, Kitty took the front seat. I drove the car to the gate, and Jean was already waiting there. She didn't say much but gave that glance to Kitty before taking the back seat. Just a sec. I almost forgot to book an appointment. I took out my phone and dialed the real estate agent's number. "Hello, this is Mary speaking," a pleasant female voice answered. "Hi, Mary. I'm calling about the penthouse listing. Is it available for a tour right now?" "Yes, it is. Would you like to schedule an appointment?" she asked. "We're already on our way," I said. "We'll be there in about 20 minutes. "All right, I'll meet you at the building," she confirmed. I hung up the phone, and we started driving toward the city. It was a 20-minute drive, and during that time, Kitty and Jean were talking about other places they might like to visit. They even talked about the world tour. "World tour?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah. We'd like to see all the wonders of the world," Kitty said. "But it's still just a dream." "Well, maybe one day." Jean sighed. "We'll see about it someday." I chuckled. "Why don't we go this summer? New York is gonna heat up anyway." "Wait, are you serious?" Kitty asked, shocked. "Sure. I think it would be fun," I replied, glancing at her. "If nothing important pops up, then why not? It might be a good change of pace after what happened recently." Jean nodded in agreement. "That would be fun, actually." Kitty smiled. "We should totally do that." "All right, then it's settled. This summer vacation, we're going to travel around the world," I declared. "Yay." Kitty cheered and Jean giggled in response. "But what about Jubilee and Rogue? I mean, we can't just leave them behind. Aren't we best friends? We have to invite them too. You want to bring Jubilee?" Jean asked, and I know what she meant by that. I wanted to have a romantic tour with just 3 of us. But all right, I guess. I glanced at Kitty. "Are you sure?" "I promise to keep Jubilee in check," Kitty assured. Jean sighed. "All right. But don't regret it." "I won't," Kitty said, giggling. "You in, Aaron?" "All right. Just hope the professor gives the permission." After 20 minutes, we arrived at the location. The building was impressive. It was a high-rise, glass-clad, luxury building with modern architecture. I parked the car in front of the building and stepped out. A middle-aged woman, who I assume is Mary, stood waiting at the entrance. She was wearing a black skirt suit, heels, and carrying a tablet. "Hello, are you Aaron?" she asked. "Yes, I'm Aaron, and these are my friends Kitty and Jean," I introduced them. "Nice to meet you all," Mary said, shaking our hands. "Shall we head up?" We nodded and followed her inside. The lobby was sleek, with marble floors and a modern aesthetic. It had a sense of quiet elegance. We took the elevator up to the top floor, and Mary led us down a hallway to the door of the penthouse. "Here we are," she said, unlocking the door and pushing it open. The penthouse was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. Natural light flooded the room, giving it a warm and inviting feel. The living area was open-plan, with a sleek kitchen to the side and a large living room with plush couches. Jean walked over to the windows, her eyes wide. "Wow, this view is incredible." Kitty wandered over to the kitchen, checking out the appliances. "This place has everything. And look at this fridge. It's like it was made for a chef." I made my way to the balcony, stepping outside to take in the fresh air. The view was stunning. From up here, you could see the entire city laid out like a living map. I felt a sense of calm wash over me. Mary joined me outside. "It's a beautiful space, isn't it? It's perfect for someone looking for privacy and luxury." I nodded. "Yeah, it's great. How's the security here?" "We have top-notch security," Mary assured. "Private access elevators, 24/7 concierge service, and surveillance systems. You won't have to worry about a thing." Kitty and Jean stepped out onto the balcony as well. "This is the one," Kitty said decisively. "It's perfect." Jean nodded in agreement. "Yeah, I think we found your new place, Aaron." I grinned, looking at both of them. "All right, but I want to check the pool first." Mary nodded. "Of course. Let's go to the rooftop." We followed her back inside, taking the stairs up to the roof. The rooftop pool was just as impressive as the rest of the building, with crystal-clear water and a breathtaking view of the city below. It was an infinity pool that seemed to flow right into the skyline. Then there was a setup for an outdoor kitchen. I can imagine the barbecue party here. I want this, I said immediately. Great. Mary smiled. The paperwork can be finalized quickly, and you could move in as soon as next week. How much is it? Kitty asked, curiously. Mary looked at me. The asking price is $20 million, exclusive tax and other expenses. Kitty's mouth fell open, and she turned to look at me. Holy shit. Jean closed her mouth with a sigh. Stop embarrassing us, Kitty. What if I were to take the entire building? Do I get a discount of some sort? I asked. Mary seemed surprised. Well, wait. You want the entire plot? I mean, the building? Oh. Mary's eyes widened in disbelief as she processed what I'd just said. She blinked a few times, clearly caught off guard. Wait. You want the entire building? All 30 floors? I gave her a calm, serious nod. Yes, the whole thing. I like the privacy, and I could use the extra space. Plus, it's a good investment, I said nonchalantly, as if I were merely discussing dinner plans. Kitty looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Are you serious, Aaron? She asked, trying to wrap her mind around it. That's... How much is that? Yup, I want the whole thing, I confirmed. Jean shook her head, unable to believe what she was hearing. Aaron, that's a lot of money. Mary took a step back, clearly needing a moment to compose herself. She looked at me, then at the tablet in her hand, as if hoping she'd misunderstood something. But when she saw the expression on my face, she realized I wasn't joking. This would be one of the biggest deals our agency has ever handled, she stammered, still looking flustered. I need to call the owner and our director to discuss this. Please excuse me for a moment. Go ahead, I replied, keeping my tone casual. Mary stepped aside, heading back toward the staircase to make her call. Kitty turned to me, wide-eyed. Aaron, what the hell? Are you really thinking of buying the entire building? Where did you get that much money? I emptied Shaw's and Stryker's accounts, I said with a smirk. Ha. Nice one. Jean lightly punched my shoulder. After what they did, it's only fair they pay for it. Besides, they are all gone. So, it'd be such a waste to let all that cash go, right? Yeah, Kitty nodded. But that's so much money. Are you sure you want to spend it all on this? I shrugged. Yeah, no biggie. I got it all covered. So, just a quick question. Call me curious. How much money do you have? Jean asked. Aren't you the curious one? Well, I can say that I am filthy rich now. Mary soon returned, her expression a mixture of excitement and nerves. All right, Mr. Aaron, she started, her voice slightly shaky. I spoke with the building owner and our director. They're definitely interested in the offer, but this is unprecedented. They'll need 2 days to finalize everything and arrange the necessary paperwork. Will that work for you? That's fine, I said, nodding. Tell them to take their time. I want everything in order. Also, I'd like a full report on the building's maintenance costs, current leases, and any other financial details I should be aware of. Mary scribbled a few notes on her tablet, trying to maintain her professionalism despite her obvious excitement. Of course, I'll make sure everything is prepared for you. You'll be able to review all the documents before making a final decision. Perfect, I said with a smile. Let me know when it's ready. I'll wire a deposit once I've reviewed the documents. Understood, she replied, visibly relieved. Thank you for considering us for such a significant purchase. This will be, well, quite the landmark deal. I nodded. You can thank me when it's done, I said with a grin. We wrapped up the conversation, and Mary walked us back down to the lobby. Her steps were brisk and a bit bouncy, the realization of the potential commission clearly sinking in. After saying goodbyes, we drove off. Jean took the front seat this time. Wanna see a movie? Maybe grab some lunch on the way. I suggested, looking at them both. Sure. What are you in the mood for? Kitty asked. There are some good new movies out right now. Or we could just walk around and see what catches our eye. Or maybe... Jean leaned closer, her eyes sparkling. We could have a little fun of our own. You know. Well, who would have thought that she meant this when she said, fun? I hate you, Jean. Kitty yelled as the guy pushed her down the bridge after checking the ropes and all safety equipment. Bungee jumping was never something on my list of things to do in my life. What? Don't tell me you didn't enjoy that, Jean teased, clearly enjoying herself. She was holding a cup of iced coffee in one hand and her phone in the other. Kitty's scream echoed up from below, her voice a mix of terror and exhilaration that made Jean and me exchange amused glances. I wasn't sure who looked more entertained, Jean, with her grin practically splitting her face, or the bungee instructor who just shoved Kitty off the bridge. She's going to make us pay for that, I muttered, shaking my head. Oh, come on, Jean said, nudging my shoulder. This is payback for all the times she dragged us into ridiculous things. Besides, you're up next. She sipped her iced coffee and winked at me, as if daring me to chicken out. I forced a smile, glancing down at the steep drop with its painfully thin-looking rope stretching down into the dizzying void. Sure, I could fly, dash across the water, and even manipulate phoenix flames. But letting gravity yank me down like a stone was something I wasn't exactly thrilled about. The bungee instructor caught my hesitation and laughed. Not scared, are you? He teased, probably noting my expression. Scared? I scoffed. I mean, come on. I could survive without this whole plunge off a bridge and bounce back like a yo-yo thing. But hey, who am I to refuse some fun? I shot a meaningful look at Jean, who just smirked and waved cheerfully. The instructor started strapping me into the harness, double-checking every buckle and knot, but his reassuring pats on the back didn't do much for my nerves. I watched as Kitty was pulled back up to the bridge, breathless but grinning. You're going to love it, Erin, she yelled as they helped her onto the platform. It's like flying but also falling? Just, trust the rope. Jean chuckled. Take the plunge, hotshot. I glanced down, feeling the world spin just a bit, and muttered, here goes nothing. The instructor gave me a light shove, and I tipped forward into freefall. The wind rushed by me, and the ground seemed to speed up as it approached in a blur. My stomach flipped as I fought the strong desire to teleport back to the platform. If I use my ability now, they'll never let me forget it. Just when I thought my heart might jump out of my chest, the bungee cord stretched and then pulled me back up, making me bounce around crazily. Kitty and Jean. Those two were laughing way too much. By the time I was pulled back up, I was breathless but exhilarated, catching Jean's smirk. See, she said. Told you it would be fun. Yeah, I panted. I'm gonna make her pay for this. That was something else. All right, Jean. Your turn now. Jean raised her eyebrow, looking from me to the dizzying drop below. Oh, I don't think so, she said, trying to back away. But Kitty and I were ready. We each grabbed one of her arms and dragged her toward the edge. Oh no, you're not getting out of this that easy, Kitty grinned wickedly. You're the one who dragged us here, remember? Jean shot us both a glare. Okay, but I thought we were just here for moral support. I grinned. Not happening. You wanted us to have fun, right? Well, fun is a two-way street. The bungee instructor joined in on the joke, securing Jean into the harness despite her mock protests. She was muttering under her breath, something about never living this down and Kitty's bad influence. Just before the push-off, Jean took a deep breath, casting us both a look that could have melted steel. You too are going to regret this. But there was a glint of thrill in her eyes. The instructor counted down, 3, 2, 1, and nudged her over the edge. Jean's scream was loud and intense, with just enough indignation to make Kitty and me burst out laughing. But halfway down, her scream turned into something else, a whoop of exhilaration that echoed back up to us. When she finally bounced back up, her cheeks were flushed, her hair wild, and she looked positively thrilled. You looked like you were having the time of your life, Jean. Kitty cheered when she was hauled back onto the platform. Jean caught her breath and pointed at me. This isn't over, Erin. Hypocrisy, thy name is Jean Grey, I said, shaking my head, a grin on my face. After the bungee adventure, we made our way over to a nearby food cart selling hot dogs, the scent of grilled meat wafting through the air. Kitty immediately snagged one, drowning it in ketchup and mustard before taking a big bite. Nothing says post-plummet snack like street food, she said, her voice muffled through a mouthful. I grabbed mine, realizing just how hungry I was now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Jean, still giving me side-eye for the whole shove-off-the-bridge moment. She took a bite, her grudge temporarily forgotten as she savored the taste. After we finished eating, Kitty spotted a nearby movie theater and dragged us over, practically bouncing with excitement as she rattled off all the latest releases. Come on, let's do a horror flick, she said, practically dragging us to the ticket counter. We survived bungee jumping, so let's see if anything on screen can scare us now. Jean rolled her eyes, but she didn't argue. Fine, but if I scream, I'm blaming you, Kitty. With popcorn in hand, we took our seats in the theater, leaning back into the soft seats just as the eerie soundtrack started up. Halfway through the movie, Kitty kept nudging me during the jump scares, while Jean managed to look thoroughly unimpressed, a slight smirk on her face whenever something creepy happened. But when the final scare hit, a truly unexpected spine-tingling moment, I couldn't help but jump a little, and I noticed Jean tense up as well. Kitty grinned, her eyes glittering in the dark. Gotcha, she whispered. Ha ha ha. It's been too long since I saw a nice horror movie. As we walked out of the theater into the night, laughing and teasing each other about who got spooked the most, Jean looked up at the stars and sighed, a smile still lingering on her face. Today was really fun. She paused, meeting each of our gazes in turn. I nodded. It was, wasn't it? Yeah, I haven't had this much fun in a long time. Kitty grinned. Jean decided to drive. As we drove back to school while laughing and chatting as usual, our talk was suddenly stopped by flashing red and blue lights in front of us. Down the street, 2 cars were speeding through traffic, their tires screeching loudly. A familiar white and pink figure was flying low behind them. Following the fast cars, it was Ghost Spider. It's been a while since I have seen her. Kitty rolled down her window and leaned out, staring after the fast disappearing cars. What's she chasing after? She wondered aloud. Probably bad guys. Jean shrugged. We should get moving. We're heading back, right? I don't want to miss curfew. Curfew schmurfew, Kitty said. Those cops always make things harder than necessary. Why don't we help her? She asked. Jean glanced at me, raising her eyebrows. Fine, I sighed as I used my teleportation power to appear over one of the black SUVs. I made sure to cover my face with ice as usual. The vehicle swerved wildly as the driver noticed me on the roof, and I gripped the edge tightly, steadying myself against the momentum. I caught a flash of white and pink. Ghost Spider had landed on the other SUV, her movement smooth as she dropped down on the hood, fingers splayed across the windshield. Her eyes met mine briefly before she raised a webbed hand and signaled that she'd take care of this one. All right, I muttered to myself, turning back to my own SUV. Time to wrap this up. I was planning on making this easy and knock them out. But those bastards began to shoot at me. I deflected them with ice armor, then a massive telekinetic blast was enough to knock them out almost instantly. I watched as the car spun out of control, but I stopped it with my telekinesis, then used my telepathy to trap their mind within insane nightmares. Ha ha ha. Serves them right. As for Ghost Spider, well, she was good. She avoided all the bullets and pulled those 4 guys with her web and wrapped them to the light posts. Then she flipped before the car and stopped it with her super strength. Nice and clean. The cops were closing in. Ghost Spider landed lightly beside me. Nice work. That was quick. Before I could reply, I noticed the barrels in the back of one of the SUVs, labeled with chemical warnings. What were they doing with this stuff? Ghost Spider stepped forward, her fingers tracing the label. Some kind of volatile chemicals. Could be stolen, could be smuggled for a lab somewhere. She looked at me. Thanks for the help. No problem. Figured you could use an extra set of hands tonight, I replied. Wait. You were that guy back then, right? Ice Mask. You helped me stop Rhino. She asked. Before I could reply, a loud clang echoed from the nearby storm drain, and the ground trembled. Ghost Spider and I both snapped our gazes toward the sound as the metal drain cover burst into the air, landing with a thud several feet away. Emerging from the opening was a hulking green-scaled creature with bulging muscles and a long whip-like tail. Wait. That's the freakin' lizard. But how the hell is he that big? The lizard's yellow eyes gleamed with predatory intent as he looked between us and the overturned SUVs. The lizard, hulking, terrifying, and freakishly enormous, locked his reptilian eyes onto me. His massive tail swept behind him, knocking a nearby street sign clear out of the ground, metal screeching as it flew across the road. Did he grow? I muttered to Ghost Spider, who was crouched beside me, web shooters aimed and ready. Yeah, definitely bigger than last time, she replied, barely audible. I'll go for his legs. You do your ice thing. I nodded, summoning a thin layer of ice over my fists and planting my feet. My mind was already reaching out, ready to invade his mind and shut him down, but then something, or rather someone, caught my eye. In the crowd, I noticed a woman transforming into a cop. It was chaos, and no one noticed her transformation. It was Mystique. Of course. Magneto's spies. No matter how many bastards I kill, another one pops up. They just couldn't let me be. I took a deep breath, letting go of the mental power I'd been gathering. If Magneto's crew was watching, I couldn't risk using my full strength. Who knows, they might even have some more mutants hidden among the crowd. I don't want to reveal my full power and bring them to my doors just yet. I just wanted a few months of quiet, away from fights, enemies, and all the other madness. All right, Aaron, I muttered to myself. Ice and telekinesis only. Keep it simple. The lizard roared, his jaws snapping as he lunged forward. Ghost Spider shot out a web, snagging his leg and yanking hard, but it barely slowed him down. He slashed at her with claws like small swords, forcing her to leap out of the way and swing up onto a nearby lamppost. She glanced down at me. Anytime you want to jump in, Ice Mask. On it. I lifted my hands, and with a swift motion, sent a blast of ice shooting out, coating the street beneath the lizard in a slick layer of frost. His footing faltered, claws scraping against the ice, but his sheer weight kept him balanced as he turned his yellow-eyed glare toward me. Nice try, he hissed, his voice a guttural snarl, before he charged again. This time, I threw up a telekinetic barrier just in time. He slammed into it with a heavy thud, but the impact sent a painful tremor through my body. Holding the barrier and my power back against a creature this strong took far more focus than I liked. Hey, lizard! I called, hoping to distract him as I sent shards of ice spiraling toward his arms and legs, trying to pin him down. The ice shattered on impact, barely slowing him, but at least it kept him from lunging at Ghost Spider as she swung back in, firing webs at his face. But the lizard just tore through the sticky webbing, snarling louder. You two think you can stop me? I'm stronger than ever. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Mystique watching, her expression unreadable, though I could sense her interest in every move I made. I clenched my jaw, refocusing on the lizard. This time, I swept my hand up, pulling chunks of ice from the ground and forming them into massive boulders in mid-air. With a push, I sent them hurtling toward the lizard. He managed to swipe at one, shattering it, but another hit him square in the chest, forcing him back a few steps. Ghost Spider zipped back down, darting close and using her agility to stay just out of his reach, slinging webs that tangled up his legs, slowing him down just enough. She looked at me, nodding. We might actually pull this off. You bugs. The lizard roared, his tail whipping toward her, but I grabbed it mid-swing with my telekinesis, holding it just enough for Ghost Spider to dodge. She threw a few punches at his side, each hit making a solid thud. But the lizard lunged forward, his jaws snapping inches from my face. He was too freaking fast for his size. I threw myself backward, summoning a thick wall of ice between us just in time. His claws scraped against it, leaving deep gouges, but I held firm, backing up to gain some distance. Careful there! Ghost Spider shouted. She swung down, landing beside me, breathing hard but still grinning. Got any more tricks up your sleeve? I kept my gaze locked on the lizard, feeling the strain in my muscles from holding the ice wall. I could sense Mystique in the crowd watching. Every instinct screamed to unleash my full power and end this quickly, but I couldn't afford to tip my hand, not with Magneto's eyes on me. Instead, I gritted my teeth and gave Ghost Spider a quick nod. Yeah, a simple one. The lizard snarled, smashing through the ice barrier with his fist. I staggered back, and Ghost Spider darted in, webbing up his arms with rapid shots. The webbing slowed him, but I knew it wouldn't hold for long. His muscles bulged, and the fibers stretched to their breaking point. Pin him down. I shouted, lunging forward. I conjured thick ice tendrils from the ground, snaking them around his legs and anchoring him to the spot. With a swift twist of my hand, I reinforced the ice with telekinetic force, locking him in place. The lizard roared, thrashing against the restraints, but they held, barely. Go. Punch him with full power, I yelled. But I know she won't use her full power because Lizard's head will split open if she uses her full power and she isn't a killer. Ghost Spider swung in, kicking off a nearby building to land a punch squarely on his jaw. I knew it. She held back. He flinched but didn't go down. Instead, His eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. He let out a guttural laugh, the sound vibrating through the air. "I will break your bones and turn you two into lizards." The lizard broke free from the ice and webbing, shattering them like glass. He rushed forward, claws swiping. I barely had time to react, throwing up a telekinetic shield as his claws crashed against it. The force sent me skidding back, boots scraping against the pavement. "Aaron." Ghost Spider's voice cut through the chaos. I glanced over, seeing her webbing up a chemical canister that had been knocked loose in the fight. The lizard's eyes followed her movements. He was eyeing the chemical canisters scattered across the street. "He's going for the chemicals. We can't let him get near them." I focused my power, sending a wave of icy spikes shooting up from the ground, creating a barrier between the lizard and the canisters. He snarled, slamming his fists against the ice, cracking it but not breaking through. Ghost Spider swung over to me, landing lightly on her feet. "He just won't stay down." "Yeah, notice that," I said as I froze him again. "I think I need to get serious." "Wait. Serious?" She gave me a shocked look. "You were holding back." I nodded. "Yes. Look around. Too many people. It's like they are watching a show. These clueless, insane people are even recording without a care of their lives. If I use my real strength, someone might get hurt. So..." She pointed at the lizard, who was trying to break free from the ice. "What do we do?" "Sigh." I sighed and took a deep breath. "Not we. I'll finish it. You stay back." The lizard broke free and ran toward the chemical canisters. I extended my arm toward him and used telekinesis once again, but on a larger scale this time. This time I wasn't holding back. I raised my other hand and lifted the lizard into the air. He roared, thrashing against the telekinetic grip, but it held strong. I clenched my fist, crushing his limbs with telekinetic force. His bones cracked and blood sprayed. I felt no remorse. A monster like him deserved to die. I ripped apart his limbs and tail. Green blood splattered everywhere. The lizard screamed in pain. "Don't kill him!" Ghost Spider yelled. "Why? He's a freaking monster." "I am just killing a monster," I said. "No one will care if I kill this monster." "It's not right." "It's very right," I muttered. I crushed the lizard's head and internal organs with my telekinesis. He stopped moving and his green blood started leaking. I dropped his body on the ground. "Phew, finally." Ghost Spider's eyes were wide as she stared at me. "You didn't have to kill him." I shrugged. "He's a monster. What do you expect me to do?" She shook her head. "I don't know, but this is too much. With your power, you could have knocked him out or something. Then what? The cops or SHIELD will put him in a cell, and what's the guarantee that he won't escape? What if he escapes and creates more chaos? Next time someone might die. This is the easiest way to handle the situation," I said as I looked around. There were too many cops. "Gotta get out of here." "I know you are right, but this is..." She trailed off. "Sometimes we have to make hard decisions. Even if that goes against our moral code. Every choice people like us make has consequences. There is no correct choice, only the one that is best for everyone at that moment. No one has the time to debate every possible outcome. That's why we have to choose the choice that seems right. How many times have you captured the villains only for them to escape and cause more havoc?" "A lot of times," she said. "Yeah, exactly." I took a deep breath. "I'm not telling you to kill every bad person. Just be ready to make the hardest decision when the time comes. You can't save everyone. Sometimes, we have to make the hardest choices so that others can live." I could tell from her expression that she didn't like it, but at the same time, she understood what I was saying. The cops were already surrounding us. So I grabbed her and teleported out of that area and appeared on top of a building, far away from there. "Well, next time, try not to hold back too much. We could have defeated him, had you used your full strength." With that, I teleported back into the car. The next morning, excitement buzzed through the Xavier Institute. The students were all abuzz, running through the halls, packing towels, sunscreen, and swimsuits. Even the older mutants, who typically held a more reserved demeanor, seemed eager for the day off. As we boarded the buses, the atmosphere was filled with chatter and laughter, something the school hadn't experienced in a long time. Celeste Water Park had outdone itself. Reserved exclusively for us, the sprawling park greeted us with massive slides, wave pools, and lazy rivers stretching as far as the eye could see. Brightly colored attractions loomed against the backdrop of a perfect blue sky. It was the kind of place you could lose yourself in, exactly what we all needed. As we arrived, I took a moment to breathe it all in. Jean, standing beside me in her elegant yet casual summer dress, squeezed my hand. "Good call, Aaron. This is perfect." The students wasted no time. Jubilee and Pixie raced to the towering slides, competing to see who could scream the loudest. Bobby and Colossus started building a massive ice sculpture in one of the splash pools, much to the delight of the younger kids. Even Logan, who grumbled about the idea of a vacation, couldn't hide the hint of a smirk as he grabbed a lounge chair near the lazy river. The main pool quickly became the heart of the action. Jean had swapped her summer dress for a sleek red swimsuit, while Kitty's playful energy lit up the area as she performed impromptu flips off the diving board. "All right, Aaron," Jean said, hands on her hips. "Show us what you've got." "Prepare to be amazed," I replied, climbing the diving board with a confidence that was mostly bluff. My attempt at a backflip ended in an awkward splash that had Kitty in stitches. "Not your finest moment," Kitty teased, floating on a pool noodle. "Give me a break," I shot back. Not all of us can phase through belly flops. Nearby, Logan was watching the chaos unfold from a lounge chair. He snorted as Scott attempted an ambitious dive, only to land with a spectacular belly flop. "Not bad, Summers," Logan called, grinning. "You're a natural at flopping." Soon, the group dispersed to tackle the park's attractions in small clusters. Jubilee and Kitty turned it into a battleground, riding the waves like surfers. Kitty, hesitant at first, ended up laughing harder than anyone when Jubilee slipped and got dunked. Kurt teleported to the top, leaving Warren huffing as he climbed the stairs. The two emerged from the slide's winding tunnels with triumphant splashes, their grins wide enough to match the cheers of onlookers. Hank floated serenely, reading and sipping from a coconut drink. Every so often, a sneaky student would splash him, prompting a playful roar that sent them squealing with delight. As for Rogue, she was sitting far away from everyone and was the only one not to wear a swimsuit because of her power. She looked lonely, watching everyone else having fun. I think I should try my power on her. Maybe try to help her live a fun moment. I walked over to her. "Yo," I slumped down beside her. "Hey, Aaron," she replied. "Do you want to go in there and enjoy?" I asked with a warm smile. "Who doesn't? But we both know it ain't gonna happen," she sighed. "What if I turn you into a regular human for a day?" I said, snapping my fingers. "What are you talking about?" Rogue said, raising her eyebrows. "Think of it as turning off your power for a day. So, you want to give it a go?" I smiled. "Are you serious?" she said, standing up. "Sure am," I said as I touched her forehead and absorbed her power. It was faster than before, way faster. Within a few seconds, I was done. Phew. I wasn't that sure that it would work on her, but seems like my power to absorb power nullified her mutation. Nice. Now, without that dangerous power of hers, she should be able to enjoy the day without any worries. Rogue froze up for a moment there. She wasn't expecting me to still standing after touching her, and she was even more shocked to see that she didn't absorb me. "Whoa," she exclaimed, her eyes wide. "You didn't die. You were expecting me to die?" I chuckled. "I mean, I did tell you, didn't I? But, how?" "Let's just say, I am very special," I said, patting her back. "Now go on, join them without any worries." Rogue froze up, unable to express her feelings. It's understandable, considering how long she had to stay away from others because of her power. But now that I've removed it, it should be fine. "It's okay, you don't need to say anything. Go have fun," I smiled warmly. She nodded silently and was about to go into the pool. "Wait a sec." I called her. "Let's make sure, just in case. Why don't you go and touch Logan? You know, just to be sure, and it will increase your confidence. You want to use him as a guinea pig? Is this really a good idea?" Rogue said, raising her eyebrows. "Just trust me. It'll be fine. He's Wolverine. Nothing is gonna happen to him," I said reassuringly. "If you say so." She turned around and went toward Logan. I didn't go with her, as I wanted to see what she was going to do by herself. Rogue stopped in front of Logan, looking hesitant. But she did what I asked her to and placed her hand on his shoulder. To everyone's surprise, she didn't absorb his power and let out a sigh of relief. She looked happy for the first time since I've seen her. "Did you do something?" Scott asked, looking at me with a suspicious look. "Maybe," I smirked. On the other side, Logan almost jumped up from his lounge chair when Rogue touched him. He was ready to lash out if things went wrong. But when he saw Rogue's happy face, he relaxed. "Wow. Kiddo, your power?" Logan asked with wide eyes. "Don't worry," I yelled. "Her power won't hurt anyone. So everyone have fun. And Kitty, Jubilee. Don't hold back on her now." Rogue went into the pool with a wide smile on her face. I saw her swimming happily, splashing Kitty and Jubilee while laughing loudly. "It worked," Storm said as she came next to me with a confused look. All this time she was following the new mutants, to keep things safe. "Of course it did," I said. "You are really a blessing, Aaron," Storm said with a smile as she saw Rogue smile and splash. I don't remember the last time I saw her real smile. "It's not a big deal," I said modestly. "By the way, you look great." Storm was wearing a white two-piece swimsuit. The design made her look like an angel floating down to earth. A sight to behold. "Eyes up here, mister," she giggled. "Sorry, I couldn't help it," I said, scratching my neck. "Well, at least you are honest," she laughed. "You know, we can go and join them," I said, pointing at the pool. "I'll look after those newbies." "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm still responsible for them." "Don't worry, I got them." "You can trust me," I smiled. "I'll come and get you if anything happens." "Okay then," Storm said and went to join the fun with everyone else. With Storm gone, I turned to the new mutants, who were enjoying the day in their own little ways. By noon, hunger pulled everyone to the picnic area. The spread was incredible: grilled burgers, hot dogs, and veggie skewers alongside heaping trays of fries and salad. Even Logan looked impressed as he piled his plate. "This ain't half bad," he admitted, biting into a burger. Translation: "You're welcome," I said, earning a chuckle from Jean. The conversation turned lighthearted as Kitty poked fun at my earlier dive. "Aaron, I think you made waves in the wrong direction." "Hey, I'm just warming up," I replied. Jean smirked, her green eyes sparkling. "Sure, keep telling yourself that." Nearby, Jubilee and Rogue were recounting their wave pool antics, earning laughs from the table. Even Scott seemed relaxed. Pixie, on the other hand, was flying around, distributing juice cans to everyone at the back. Jean sat beside me, leaning on my shoulder on the edge of the pool. I could see how happy she was, surrounded by her friends, family, and kids she loved to teach. This moment was everything she wanted, and I couldn't be happier to provide it for her. "Thanks," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For this," she said, motioning to the group. "You didn't have to do all this, but you did." "It's not a big deal, really," I said modestly. "They needed a break, and so do we. So, it's a win-win." "But you don't need to thank me, Jean," I said, squeezing her hand. "I did it because I wanted to. So let's enjoy." Kitty pulled Jean's head from behind and pushed her head between mine and Jean's. "What are you two doing without me?" "Huh? Aaron?" She smirked. Her breath smelled like hot dogs. "Nothing," I said, laughing. "Just talking about how beautiful you look in that swimsuit." "Oh," Jean exclaimed, rolling her eyes. "You didn't even praise me that way. Wait, are you jealous?" I smirked. "Maybe," she giggled. "Should I be?" "Not at all." "Good answer," Jean laughed. "Hey, you two, don't pretend like I don't exist here," Kitty said, interrupting us. "She's jealous," Jean teased. "Yup, she is." "Well, no, I'm not," Kitty exclaimed, shaking her head. "Right," we both said. "Tisk fine." Kitty pulled back and then pushed us both forward into the pool. "Hey!" Jean yelled as she splashed Kitty with water. As I surfaced, coughing and splashing water from my face, Jean emerged beside me, her red hair plastered against her face. "Oh, you are so dead, Pride," she yelled, flicking a stream of water at Kitty, who was already laughing hysterically from the pool's edge. "You'll have to catch me first." Kitty taunted, phasing just as Jean lunged at her. The rivalry exploded from there, spiraling into a chaotic water war that quickly engulfed everyone around. Kitty rallied Jubilee and the younger mutants into Team Chaos, their weaponry consisting of oversized water guns, pool noodles, and raw unpredictability. Jubilee's fireworks sparkled overhead like mini firecrackers, dazzling Team Chaos's victims into submission. Jean, never one to back down from a challenge, quickly organized team control, roping in Rogue, Storm, and even Scott. The latter joined reluctantly, grumbling about his ruined hair but staying to impress Jean, though he would never admit it. Logan, the self-proclaimed neutral party, sat on a poolside lounge chair nursing a cold drink. "Y'all are acting like kids," he muttered, though his words were drowned out by the rising screams and laughter. Jubilee led a surprise attack on Team Control's water gun stash, distracting Storm with a burst of sparkles while Kitty phased through Scott, stealing a key weapon. "Stop phasing through people," Scott yelled, shaking a water gun that had been sabotaged to spray backward. "You snooze, you lose, Summers," Kitty teased, darting away just as a miniature whirlwind sent her and Jubilee splashing into the shallow end. "Nice one, Storm," Jean cheered, holding her hand up for a high five. Storm smirked, brushing a few stray water droplets from her white hair. Logan's neutrality ended when Kitty phased through him, using him as a human shield. Soaked and fuming, he grabbed a bucket of water and dumped it over her head. "Damn it," cried. "You're dead meat," Kitty gasped, dripping wet. "Oh, it's on, old man." She lunged at him with a pool noodle, earning cheers and jeers from both teams. I decided to keep things interesting. With a subtle burst of telekinesis, I redirected a stray splash toward Jubilee and Kitty. "Hey, no powers," Jubilee shrieked, shaking her fist at me. I held my hands up in mock innocence. "Technically, I'm not on a team." "Traitor," Kitty yelled, but before she could retaliate, Logan dumped another bucket of water over her. Pixie flew around, spraying water, while Kurt teleported around shooting his water gun. As the water war raged, the lines between teams blurred, with Mutant switching sides, forming alliances, and then betraying them moments later. The climax came near the diving board, where Jean and Kitty faced off in a dramatic standoff, each armed with a pool noodle. The air buzzed with tension, though it was clear from their grins that this was all part of their game. "You've been a pain in my butt all day," Jean said, mock serious as she pointed the noodle at Kitty like a sword. "And you've been bossing me around all year," Kitty retorted, sticking out her tongue. Before they could clash, Jubilee and Rogue appeared out of nowhere, grabbing Jean from behind and dunking her into the water. Jean surfaced, sputtering but laughing, and responded with a telekinetic wave that drenched everyone within 10 feet. "Jean, no powers," Rogue protested, but her grin said she didn't really mind. "Don't start a war you can't finish," Jean quipped, her green eyes sparkling with mischief. By the time the battle ended, the pool area was a war zone of drenched towels, abandoned water guns, and exhausted mutants. Even Logan, the gruffest of the bunch, couldn't suppress a smirk. "You people are nuts," he muttered, wringing out his shirt. "Admit it, you had fun," I teased. Jean, Kitty, and I slumped against the pool's edge, catching our breath. The rivalry between the two seemed to have cooled, for now. "All right," Kitty panted, holding out a soggy hand. "Truce." "For now," Jean replied, shaking it. Of course, she couldn't resist one last playful splash. "You're impossible," Kitty muttered, though her laughter betrayed her words. Floating on her back, she gazed up at the darkening sky. "You know what? This was a good day." Jean glanced at me, her smile softening. "Maybe. But Team Control still wins." "Win?" "Pretty sure it was a draw," I said, raising an eyebrow. Jean's smirk turned sly. "In that case." Using her telekinesis, she lifted a wave of water and drenched me completely. As the sun dipped low, the sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink. We gathered near the wave pool, the day's energy giving way to a peaceful camaraderie. "This was a good day, Aaron. We don't get many of these," Storm said with a smile as she watched the others, still lost in excitement. "No, we don't," I agreed, watching Kitty playfully splash Warren in the fading light. For a moment, everything felt right. No threats, no battles. Just us, a group of people finding joy in a world that often demanded too much. Soon, we wrapped up our party. The bus ride home was quiet, the earlier chatter replaced with a contented exhaustion. Jubilee and Rogue whispered conspiratorially, while Scott and Hank exchanged knowing smiles. Jean rested her head on my right shoulder, and Kitty rested her head on my left shoulder and gave a tired but happy smile. "You really nailed it today," Kitty murmured. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with the subdued energy of a Sunday. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting golden streaks across the floors. The air smelled faintly of coffee and toast, and the muffled sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen. I rolled over in bed, blinking against the light as the events of the previous day filtered back into my mind. The water war, the laughter, Jean and Kitty leaning against me on the bus ride home. A rare, genuine smile crept onto my face. My peace was short-lived. A sharp knock on the door jolted me upright. "Aaron. Breakfast." Kitty's voice rang out, accompanied by another series of knocks. "If you don't hurry, Logan's gonna eat all the bacon again." I groaned, dragging myself out of bed. "Tell him to leave some, or I'll phase his bacon into the walls." Her laugh echoed from the hallway. "You'd have to fight me for it first." Throwing on a t-shirt and some sweats, I shuffled down to the kitchen. The usual chaos awaited me. Jubilee sat perched on the counter, swinging her legs and animatedly recounting something to Kurt, who was flipping pancakes with a kind of precision only teleportation could provide. Rogue sipped her coffee, looking half asleep but content, while Storm read the morning paper, a small smile tugging at her lips. Jean stood by the stove, hair pulled into a messy bun, concentrating on stirring scrambled eggs. She caught my eye and gave me a small warm smile that made the room feel a little brighter. Kitty, true to her word, was guarding the plate of bacon like a sentinel, a mischievous glint in her eye. "You're late," she teased. "Could have let me sleep in," I retorted, snatching a piece of bacon from the plate before she could react. "Oh, it's on," she growled, lunging for me. I dodged, laughing, but before the situation could escalate, Logan's gruff voice cut through the kitchen. "Can't y'all have one quiet morning?" He walked in, hair still damp from his early run, and grabbed a cup of coffee. "Where's the fun in that?" Jubilee quipped, tossing a blueberry at him. He caught it mid-air and ate it. The breakfast chatter soon turned into plans for the day. Kurt suggested a movie marathon. Jubilee wanted to hit the mall with Rogue and Kitty, and Body proposed taking the younger mutants for some combat training. Jean leaned over to me as I buttered a piece of toast. "What about you? What's your plan for today?" I shrugged. "Haven't decided. Might join the movie crowd, or maybe hit the danger room for a bit. What about you?" Her eyes twinkled. "I was thinking of taking some quiet time in the garden. You're welcome to join if you want." Kitty, overhearing, smirked. "Careful, Aaron. She's got plans to rope you into pulling weeds." "Don't listen to her," Jean said, rolling her eyes. "I just need some peace after yesterday. My ears are still ringing, and I think I got some water in my ears." "Yesterday was amazing though," Jubilee said, her voice softer now. "We should do stuff like that more often." "Agreed," Storm said, setting down her paper. "Next one is on me." As breakfast wound down, I couldn't help but think about how rare mornings like this were, full of laughter, good food, and a sense of family. Hope, it lasts forever. Outer space, a massive ship entered the solar system. The rest of the morning was pretty uneventful. After breakfast, I went to the rec room where the rest were watching movies. Jubilee was at the helm of the remote and was having a marathon of cheesy action films and comedic movies. Kitty sat cross-legged beside me, tossing popcorn into the air and catching it with an infrequent flair. Jean went to the garden to do her chores. Around noon, a notification chimed from multiple phones and devices around the mansion, grabbing everyone's attention. "Breaking news from SHIELD," Scott said as he took the remote from Jubilee and flipped the channel from the movie to a live press conference. Nick Fury was standing at a podium with the SHIELD logo on it. "Ladies and gentlemen," began Fury, his voice firm but not imposing. "The world is changing. We face threats that no one nation, no one organization, can handle alone. To meet these challenges, SHIELD is proud to announce the formation of a new team, the Avengers Initiative." Everyone began to whisper. "Avengers now? Then, this reality is different from what I thought. TSK. Although I have information on the heroes and villains, I have no way of knowing which events are going to pop up next. Then if we consider the alternate versions of heroes and villains. Who is the villain or hero? Shit." On the screen, Fury kept talking. "This team will have some of the world's most amazing people. Together, they will protect Earth from both known and unknown dangers. I'm happy to introduce the founding members: Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Bruce Banner, also known as the Hulk. No Thor. Just as I thought, alternate reality. My thoughts were racing as the camera displayed the team standing behind Fury. Steve Rogers looked like a hero with a star on his suit, standing tall next to Tony Stark, who was already smiling at the cameras. Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton stood beside the group, as usual looking serious, whereas Bruce Banner seemed a bit uneasy. Fury shifted his weight at the podium, giving the rumbles in the press room time to subside before he spoke again. As the world continues to change, so must we. Though the Avengers Initiative shall be a foundational element of global defense, S.H.I.E.L.D. realizes the efforts that all other extraordinary individuals have put into keeping the world safe from harm and working behind the scenes. That's why I am also pleased to announce a strategic alliance with the X-Men. A pinkish portal opened beside Fury as Charles and Blink walked up beside Fury. "You have got to be kidding me," Logan grumbled, his claws instinctively twitching. As the close-up shot of Professor Charles Xavier focused as he stood next to Fury with Blink, murmurs, and incredulous whispers escaped from the room. Fury continued, his voice measured and authoritative. "The X-Men have proven their commitment to defending this Earth time and time again, at great personal cost. It is my honor to hereby announce that the Avengers Initiative and the X-Men will come together, unifying under one banner, to unite against threats that not only threaten nations but humanity itself." The screen changed to reporters hurrying to ask questions. Among them stood one very loud voice that could cut through the din. "Director Fury, does this mean mutants are now officially part of global defense initiatives? How does the public respond to this?" Fury raised a hand to silence the crowd. "This partnership isn't about politics, it's about survival. The Avengers and the X-Men share a common goal: protecting the Earth. Together, they represent the best of what we can achieve when we set aside differences and fight for the greater good." Blink moved forward now, replaced by quiet determination rather than her usual insouciance. "The X-Men have always sought to bring about an understanding, in peace, between mutants and humans. This alliance with the Avengers is a step closer to a safer future for all, regardless of our origin." The camera turned toward Charles and nodded gravely. "In a world with ever-rising problems, unity is still our greatest strength. The X-Men prepare to stand side by side with the Avengers to protect this planet." Back in the mansion, Logan scoffed, crossing his arms. "Unity, yeah? Sounds like another excuse for S.H.I.E.L.D. to stick their noses in our business. Now, they are gonna gobble us up like a hungry snake." "Logan, they're offering to work with us, not against us," Storm said, her tone calm but firm. "This could be a chance to show the world we're not just danger, we're heroes too." Jubilee leaned forward in her chair, eyes wide with excitement. "Do you think they'll call us in for missions? Like, Jubilee, we need your fireworks to dazzle the enemy. Or like, blast them to oblivion, Jubilee, our explosive queen." Kitty smirked. "Yeah, or Kitty, phase through this impenetrable vault and steal the plans." Sounds like fun. Scott, however, looked skeptical. "Fury's not telling us everything. He never does. We need to tread carefully." I didn't say anything, just staring at the screen and thinking about how the events were changing. The news conference wrapped up with a few more words from Fury and the team before the press started asking questions about the new alliance. The rest of the afternoon went chattering, full of excitement, concern, and heavy debate amongst the team. It appeared that everybody had an opinion about the Avengers Initiative and X-Men's sudden union with S.H.I.E.L.D. by dinner time. The mansion was filled with tension and curiosity. Jean agreed with Logan's view on S.H.I.E.L.D. Logan, of course, continued to mumble about the interventionist government and how they were so much better off on their own. Storm, ever the diplomat, reminded them all that this could be a step toward the acceptance mutants had been fighting for all along. "It's not about S.H.I.E.L.D. controlling us, Logan. It's about changing perceptions. This is a chance for us." "Yeah, tell that to the people who still call us freaks," Logan retorted, stabbing a piece of meat on his plate. "S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't want allies. They want tools. Just wait and see. You will know soon enough." As the evening calmed down, the chatter died down and everyone went their ways. I was about to go to Kitty's room to spend some time with her, but a new message from Psylocke caught my attention. "Hey Aaron, wanna train? I could really use a sparring partner." I thought about it for a moment before replying. "Sure, when do you want to start?" "Now. If you are free." "I'm in the training room." "I'm on my way." I went to the training room where Psylocke had requested me to meet her for a session. Psylocke was already there, stretching in her usual no-nonsense attire, a fitted tank top and athletic pants that gave her freedom of movement. Her violet hair was tied back in a sleek ponytail, and her sharp eyes locked onto me as I entered. "You're late," she remarked, though her tone held more amusement than irritation. She rolled her shoulders and stepped onto the mat, her bare feet making no sound. "By a minute," I countered with a faint smile, tossing my jacket onto a bench nearby. I joined her on the mat, feeling the firm give of the surface beneath my feet. "No powers," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Just skill." "Agreed." "Agreed." She nodded and assumed a stance, her body low and balanced. I mirrored her, watching her movements closely. We circled each other for a moment, testing the waters, each looking for an opening. She moved first, a feint with her left hand, followed by a swift roundhouse kick. I barely sidestepped, the air from her strike brushing past me. I retaliated with a jab, but she blocked it easily, her forearm meeting mine with a solid thwack. Her movements were precise and fluid, her body a weapon honed to perfection. "Not bad," she said, a smirk tugging at her lips. "But you're holding back. You sure about that?" I replied, stepping in closer with a quick combination, a jab, a hook, and a low kick aimed at her thigh. She deflected the punches but had to pivot sharply to avoid the kick, her footing momentarily shifting. "Better," she said, now more serious. I grinned at her words, feeling the rush of combat beginning to awaken something deep within me. The rhythmic dance of sparring, the quick exchanges, and the adrenaline, it was all too familiar. In my past life, I lived for this. The feeling of an opponent's movement, reading their intent in every shift of weight and every glance. Psylocke lunged at me again, her strikes faster, more precise. I could see the focus in her eyes, the sharpness of a warrior who had trained her entire life. Her fist shot toward my face, and I sidestepped, parrying with my arm before throwing a knee toward her midsection. She twisted, narrowly avoiding the blow, and retaliated with an elbow aimed at my head. I ducked, feeling the wind of her strike pass over me. My body was getting into its groove now, my muscles remembering the rhythm of a fight. I feinted a left jab and slipped under her guard, sweeping my leg to try and take her down. But she was quick, hopping over my leg and delivering a sharp kick to my ribs as she landed. The impact was solid, making me wince, but it only fueled my excitement. "You're getting serious now," she noted with a smile, her breaths coming a bit quicker but her form still perfect. I chuckled, rolling my shoulders. "You wanted a sparring partner, not a punching bag. Time to step it up." We moved again, the intensity rising. Her fists flew like bullets, a shower of punches and kicks that I met with blocks and parries. I slipped inside her guard with a hard hook to the ribcage, but she took it with a grunt and spun into a back fist that clipped my chin. I staggered slightly but recovered quickly, the taste of blood in my mouth only sharpening my focus. "It's fun to fight like this without using any power. That's the spirit," she smirked and wiped a bead of sweat from her brow. I could feel the smile spreading across my lips, the kind that once used to come across my face when I was at my peak, challenging fighters at their best. There were fights I enjoyed and some that I didn't and was basically forced into. Still, I'm freaking enjoying this moment. It was like riding a bike. You don't really forget how to ride. My stance shifted, becoming looser, more fluid. I stopped trying to anticipate her and instead let my instincts take over. When she lunged again, I didn't step back. I met her head-on, blocking her strike and catching her wrist. With a twist, I spun her around and pulled her into a lock, pinning her arm behind her back. She grunted in surprise but didn't hesitate, throwing her weight into me to break the hold. I let her go, but as she turned, I was already swinging a low kick at her legs. Psylocke jumped to avoid it, using her momentum to flip backward, landing gracefully on her feet. Her eyes gleamed with a challenge, a wild grin spreading across her face. She was also enjoying this moment. "Now that felt like a real fighter," she said, breathing heavily. I shrugged nonchalantly, even though I could feel the familiar strain in my muscles, the heat of a good fight. Maybe I just needed a warm-up. Her smirk widened. "Is that so? Then let's see how warmed up you really are." She launched at me with a new ferocity, and this time, I didn't hold back. Our strikes were faster, harder. We were moving in perfect sync, almost like a deadly dance. Punches, kicks, elbows, and knees flew between us. My mind cleared completely, attending only to her movements and the rhythm of her breathing, shifts in her stance. I landed a hard uppercut to her chin, forcing her back, but she recovered almost immediately and countered with a roundhouse kick that I barely blocked in time. The impact numbed my arm, but I grinned, stepping forward and driving my knee toward her midsection. She blocked with both arms, skidding back slightly from the force. We paused for a brief moment, both panting, but neither of us was willing to show any sign of quitting. Psylocke wiped at the sweat on her forehead, her eyes shining with excitement. I knew you were good, but damn, Eren. You are like a different person once you get serious. I smirked, rolling my shoulders as I took a deep breath. What can I say? I'm all in one package. Cheeky brat, she replied, stepping forward once more, her stance shifting, becoming more fluid, almost like a dance. Then show me what you've got, fighter. I moved in, my body now fully in sync with the rhythm of combat. I could feel the excitement bubbling up inside me, a thrill I hadn't felt in ages. My movements became sharper, quicker. I ducked under her high kick and countered with a sweeping leg, knocking her off balance. She fell to one knee, but before I could follow up, she rolled backward and sprang to her feet, landing a punch on my cheek as she came up. The strike made my vision blur for a second, but I grinned, wiping the blood from my lip. Nice hit. She smiled back, her eyes gleaming with a wild, unrestrained joy. You too. And before we knew it, we were at it again. Roundhouse kicks and punches flew through the air as we countered. Every hit I landed back came with one of hers. Straight and pure skill exchange. No powers, no tricks, only two fighters testing the limit of the other. Finally, we both stopped, our bodies dripping with sweat, our chests pumping up with every breath. We moved around each other carefully and slowly, grinning like lunatics. Well, we ended up having one final round. I kinda held back a little at the end, since it was a friendly spar. We both lay on the floor, drenched in sweat and huffing in exhaustion. You're good, Eren, Psylocke said, her tone filled with genuine respect. I chuckled, brushing a hand through my hair. You're not so bad yourself. Thanks for the spar. I needed that. Likewise. So, I heard you are moving out of the school again, Psylocke suddenly asked me, as if trying to change the topic. I nodded, wondering why she suddenly changed the topic. Yeah, I've had enough fun with the baddies. I guess I just want some peace and a life out there, you know? Away from all the X-Men or hero stuff. A normal life. She looked at me, raising her brows. You know it's impossible for me to have a normal life. A moment of peace, yeah, that sounds nice though. So, you got both Jean and Kitty, huh? Quite a playboy, aren't you? She teased me. What can I say? I'm irresistible, I replied with a shrug. That you are. She mumbled, her voice barely audible, but I still heard it. What? Nothing, don't worry about it. She waved her hand dismissively. Wait. Don't tell me you like me too. I asked her, surprised. Don't flatter yourself too much. You are good-looking, strong, caring, and not bad in bed. Ah. Tiske, forget the last part. She stood up and was about to run away. You read Kitty's mind, didn't you? I asked her, stopping her in her tracks. I stood up and walked toward her. She paused for a moment, looking at me over her shoulder. I might have accidentally seen that image in her mind when I met her. And yes, I can't forget it. She admitted, blushing as she remembered the scene. I see, I said, nodding slowly, my eyes twinkling with amusement. So, you like what you saw? What? No, of course not, she protested, trying to hide the redness in her cheeks. I'm not some pervert like you. So, what did you think about it? I asked her, stepping closer. She gulped, turning away from me. It was nothing special. Really? Yet, you just said so many good things about me. Good-looking, strong, caring, and not bad in bed. Those were your words, weren't they? I didn't mean it that way, she stuttered, refusing to look at me. But you did say them, I said, stepping even closer, our bodies almost touching. So, what do you think now? She remained silent, her shoulders tense and her fists clenched at her sides. I could feel the nervousness radiating from her, and I knew that if I pushed any further, she would probably end up using her powers on me. I sighed, taking a step back. No point pressing her too much just yet. Well, life is too short for regrets. If you want to talk, you know where to find me. I walked past her, heading toward the showers. As I reached the door, I heard her voice again. Don't hold your breath, Eren. We'll just see about that. In your dreams. Without dreams, we cannot live. You are already living in my dreams. What? She looked at me, shocked at what I just said. I walked out of the training room and entered the shower, chuckling at her flustered reaction. Well, that was a good session. But my mind, without dreams, we cannot live. You are already living in my dreams. What the hell is wrong with you? It was around late morning. I was sitting in one of the study rooms, waiting for Professor Xavier to arrive. Despite his duties as headmaster and the ongoing events, he agreed to help me push my telepathy further boosted with the Phoenix Force. The professor walked in, his stride steady and confident. His sharp blue eyes carried a glimmer of amusement as he noticed my raised brows. "You look surprised, Aaron," he remarked, settling into a chair opposite me. "Well, you're doing better than I expected," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "Speaking of which, I thought you'd be busy with the announcement and all the paperwork." A small smile played on his lips. "Let's just say I have a capable team to handle it. Besides, how could I refuse someone who brought me back to my feet? If I were to guess, Hank and Blink are probably grumbling about being buried under his desk work right now." I smirked, but I kept that thought to myself. "All right, Professor. Let's get started," I said, sitting up. "I've been working on expanding my telepathic range and precision. With the Phoenix Force enhancing me, I feel like there's so much untapped potential, but I want to learn how to control it better." Xavier nodded thoughtfully, his fingers steepled. Telepathy, especially when augmented by something as volatile as the Phoenix Force, is both a gift and a great responsibility. Recklessness could lead to catastrophic consequences. Let's begin by testing the limits of your current abilities. We'll start simple. Let's start from the basics. He gestured for me to focus. "Reach out to my mind, Aaron. I will not resist. Search for a thought, but remember, precision is key." Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath and let my consciousness expand. The world around me faded as I tuned into the rhythmic hum of the professor's mind. His thoughts were like a vast library, each one neatly catalogued and shielded, yet accessible. I sifted through them carefully, bypassing memories and mundane musings until I found a recent thought. The team breakfast could use an upgrade. Perhaps Hank would be willing to attempt soufflés. My lips twitched in amusement. Opening my eyes, I met his gaze. "Soufflés? That's ambitious for Hank." Xavier chuckled softly. "Indeed. But you were precise, an encouraging start. Now, let's test your range. Extend your consciousness beyond this room. Can you find Logan? He's likely prowling the grounds." Expanding my mental field was easy. With the Phoenix Force as a crutch, my awareness spilled out of the room like a wave, washing over the mansion and its grounds. It was so different from the regular telepathy. I found Logan near the garage, tinkering with his motorcycle. His mind was closed off, guarded as always, but his surface thoughts were loud enough. Why the hell did Chuck dump his papers on Hank again? Guy deserves a break. Might take the bike for a spin later, maybe grab a beer. Gotta keep an eye out for Jubilee. Kid, keep blasting my bike too much. I might go broke at this rate. Sigh. I smirked. Logan's busy grumbling about Hank's workload and Jubilee. And he's thinking about sneaking off for a beer. The professor raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "Very good. Your telepathic reach is exceptional. But let's push further. Beyond the mansion. Focus on the town nearby." I nodded, closing my eyes again. This time, I reached outward, imagining my mind as a ripple extending into the world. The nearby town buzzed with activity, its collective thoughts blending into a cacophony of voices. It was overwhelming at first, but I began to filter them, honing in on individual minds. A barista worried about their latte art. A jogger pushing themselves to finish their route. A child marveling at the candy aisle in a supermarket. "I can hear them," I murmured, "but it's noisy. Hard to focus on just one. Shit. Too much noise." It felt as if my head was about to burst open. Xavier's voice was calm and steady. "Filter the noise, Aaron. Focus only on what you need. It's like tuning a radio. Find the frequency you desire." I adjusted my mental focus, narrowing it until I latched onto a man at a coffee shop. He was staring at his phone, scrolling through news articles about the latest hero-villain skirmish in New York. Another fight in the city. When will they stop wrecking everything? I relayed his thoughts to Xavier, who nodded approvingly. Impressive. You're adapting quickly. But there's one final test. Extend your reach globally. Find a mind far from here, one you've never encountered before. With the boost from the Phoenix Force, it should be possible. Globally? That was ambitious. I closed my eyes, my breathing steady as I poured more energy into expanding my consciousness. The Phoenix Force surged within me, amplifying my reach. I felt myself soaring past oceans, continents, into cities I'd never seen. The vastness of the world was dizzying, but I didn't let it deter me. It was like countless images flying past me at a blinding speed. I can't lose my focus now. I zeroed in on a bustling marketplace in India. A vendor's thoughts caught my attention. He was haggling with a customer over spices. If she thinks I'll lower the price any further, she's mistaken. My cardamom is worth every rupee. I chuckled softly, opening my eyes. Found someone in India. A spice vendor holding firm during a negotiation. Xavier's expression was one of awe and pride. Remarkable, Aaron. How does it feel? Your telepathic range is almost unfathomable. It's hard to explain. I feel like I can sense everything around me, but also nothing. Like I'm connected to everyone yet still alone, I replied as I continued to scan the planet. I could tell the difference between a human and a mutant. Shit. I'm a freaking walking cerebro. Sorry. That probably doesn't make sense. No need to apologize, he said gently. I understand what you mean. It's the burden and wonder of our powers. Sometimes they're difficult to describe, even for those who wield them. I let out a breath, my mind still buzzing with the sheer scale of what I'd just done. Professor Xavier watched me with calm patience as I steadied myself. But my curiosity was already spiraling into something more. Could I go deeper? Could I look into places that were supposed to be beyond reach? Professor, I began, I'd like to push further. There's something I want to try. His expression turned cautious, but he didn't discourage me. Be careful, Aaron. The Phoenix Force may make you feel invincible, but overreach can have consequences. I nodded, focusing again. This time, my aim wasn't random. I wanted answers. Answers hidden from the world and the reason Fury decided to assemble the Avengers and X-Men together. My thoughts drifted toward S.H.I.E.L.D. and its elusive director, Nick Fury. Surely, if there were secrets worth uncovering, they'd be there. As I extended my consciousness, I felt the faint hum of power dampeners, a network of nullifiers meant to block telepaths like me. Ordinarily, it would have been impossible to breach, but with the Phoenix Force fueling me, the resistance barely slowed me down. My mind slipped through the cracks, brushing against the presence of Fury himself. The chaos of his thoughts hit me like a storm, strategies, contingencies, and secrets piled upon secrets. I sifted carefully, searching for something concrete. And then I found it. An alien signal. Fury's mind replayed the scene like a vivid memory. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s monitoring systems had picked up a strange signal from deep space. It was unlike anything they'd encountered before. For a brief moment, their sensors caught a glimpse of a spacecraft. The image was grainy, but unmistakable, a sleek, dark vessel with glowing runes etched into its surface. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished. The implications of what I saw hit me like a freight train. Aliens? A spaceship? Fury's thoughts raced with possibilities. Was it hostile? Was it observing us? Or worse, was it preparing for something? But there was more. My focus shifted to a heated argument between Fury and another presence in the room, Bolivar Trask. Yup. Trask, that bastard. Fury's frustration burned through his thoughts. He wanted coexistence, pushing for ways to protect both mutants and humans. But Trask was relentless, advocating for the eradication of mutants entirely. His mind was filled with cold calculations, his thoughts laced with hatred and fear. I caught glimpses of Sentinel prototypes, schematics designed to target mutants with terrifying efficiency. Trask is a problem, Fury's mind echoed. But cutting him loose isn't an option. Not yet. The Council's backing him. Sigh. General Ross is swaying the government, and now this. That bastard. I should just kill Trask. I wanted to rip Trask's mind apart and show him what it felt like to be hunted. Wait. What about endless nightmares, or should I turn him into a maniac? But before I could delve further, a sharp pain sliced through my head. Ah! I gasped, clutching my temples. The connection snapped violently, like a door slammed shut in my face. My vision blurred as a blinding headache consumed me. And then, everything went black. It was a slow beeping that somehow brought me back to reality. My eyelids felt like lead, but I opened them slightly to squint through the dim light of the infirmary. The smell and the sounds of humming medical equipment confirmed my location. "Ah, you're awake," came a familiar voice. I winced at the dull ache in my skull and shifted my head a little, and Professor Xavier was sitting beside the bed with his hands folded neatly in his lap. Though his face was serene, there was a tinge of concern upon it. How long was I out? I rasped, my throat dry. "Nearly 6 hours," he replied, his voice gentle. "You pushed yourself too far, Aaron. I warned you about overreach." I sat up slowly, ignoring the pounding in my head. Dang. It felt as if hundreds of people were honking in my ears. Memories of what I had seen in Fury's mind came rushing back. The alien signal, Trask, the Sentinels, everything. My fists clenched involuntarily, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Trask is building Sentinels, Professor," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "And Fury knows about it. He's letting it slide because of some council politics. They're playing games with our lives." Xavier's expression darkened slightly, but he maintained his composure as usual. "I suspected as much," he said in a low voice. "Trask's hatred for mutants is well documented. But this, it's worse than I feared. Still, Aaron, your methods, my methods." I snapped, cutting him off. "I got us the truth, didn't I? If I hadn't pushed myself, we'd still be in the dark. How is that wrong? You are always too soft, Professor. It's going to kill someone one day." Xavier sighed, his tone firm but compassionate. "The Phoenix Force makes you feel all-powerful, at a cost. Your carelessness could have extreme repercussions, not just for you but for all around you. Do you see? Even with your healing ability, you cannot heal your mental condition." I wanted to argue and prove that I had done things right, but the headache and weariness prevented me from saying so. So, I leaned on my pillows in frustration and said nothing. "Aaron," Xavier continued, his voice softer now, "I know you mean well. But power without control is a dangerous thing. You must learn to balance your abilities with restraint. Only then can you truly master them." I looked away, staring at the sterile ceiling. He was right, of course. But it didn't make the anger or the helplessness any easier to swallow. Trask was out there, building weapons to exterminate mutants, and I had to sit here, nursing a headache. "Fine," I muttered. "What's next, then? Meditation? Another lecture?" Xavier chuckled softly. "Rest for now. Your mind needs time to recover. Pushing yourself further in this state would be unwise. And don't worry, Aaron. We will address Trask and the Sentinels, but we will do so together, and with care." The door to the infirmary swung open, and in walked Hank with a tablet. His fur was an attentive shade of blue under bright lights as he questioned me with a look. "Ah, you are awake," he said, in a voice that was both relief and exasperation. "You gave us quite a scare, Aaron. What were you thinking, attempting a global telepathic sweep powered by the Phoenix Force? Do you have a death wish?" "Noted, Hank," I grumbled, rubbing my temples. "I've been scolded enough already." Hank sighed, handing the tablet to Xavier. "We're monitoring your vitals closely. Your brain activity was off the charts when we found you. Whatever you did, it strained your system significantly. I'd recommend no more mental gymnastics for at least a week." "A week?" I protested, sitting up straighter. "We don't have that kind of time." "Trask will still be there in a week," Hank interrupted, his tone stern. "You're no good to anyone if you burn yourself out, Aaron. Even with the healing factor, it can only heal your injuries, not your mental condition." Xavier placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Listen to him, Aaron. Rest. Regain your strength. There will be time to act, but not at the cost of your well-being." I sighed, sinking back into the bed. As much as I hated to admit it, they were right. Pushing myself further now would only make things worse. But as I closed my eyes, letting the exhaustion take over, one thought lingered in my mind. I'd seen too much to stand idle. Trask, Fury, the alien signal. This was just the beginning. I could just feel it. And I could feel something more. Ah, crap. Jean stormed into the room, followed by Kitty. Both of them glared at Hank and the professor. All right, Hank raised his hands defensively. Go easy on him. He still needs rest. The two men retreated from the room, leaving me alone with an irate Jean and an equally worried Kitty. What the hell were you thinking? Jean hissed, her eyes blazing with fury. Pushing yourself like that? Did you want to fry your brain, or what? And I am gonna give that professor a piece of my mind. What kind of lessons is he giving you? I swear, if you pull a stunt like this again. Kitty placed a hand on Jean's arm, trying to calm her down. Jean, I think that's enough. He's clearly learned his lesson. Look at him. He looks exhausted. Yeah, listen to her. I'm exhausted, I grumbled. Jean's eyes softened slightly, and she sighed. Fine. But don't think you're off the hook yet. She turned to Kitty. You keep an eye on him and don't let him do any funny business with his power. She was about to leave. Where are you going? Kitty asked. As I said, I need to give that professor a piece of my mind. I couldn't help but smile. Jean, you're cute when you're angry. She spun around, her eyes narrowed. Sweet talk won't get you anywhere, mister. She left the room, leaving Kitty and me alone. Well, that was eventful, I said, leaning back against the pillows. Arg, my neck hurts, and this freaking headache. I thought I had it under control. Well, gotta train more. That's the only way to avoid another situation like this. As for Trask, I am gonna kill that bastard in his sleep. Kitty shook her head, a wry smile on her lips. You really know how to push people's buttons, don't you? She cares about you, Aaron. We all do. If something happened to you. I know. I just got a little excited, that's all, I replied, closing my eyes. But I'll be fine. Promise. Kitty nodded, squeezing my hand. I'll hold you to that. Now, get some rest. You need it. I chuckled softly. Wanna cuddle? Kitty laughed, rolling her eyes. Sure, why not? Move over. I shifted to one side of the bed, making room for her. She climbed in beside me, snuggling up against me. Her warmth was comforting, and I felt myself drifting off into sleep. The last thing I remembered was her soft voice whispering in my ear. Sleep tight. The infirmary was quiet, save for the soft hum of machines monitoring my vitals. I shifted restlessly, my mind drifting despite the ache that throbbed behind my eyes. Sleep had been elusive since my telepathic overreach, but exhaustion finally won out, pulling me into a heavy, dreamless void. Or so I thought. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the infirmary anymore. The air was thick and cold, a shroud of mist curling around my feet. I stood on a barren, ashen plain, the ground cracked and lifeless beneath me. The sky above was a swirling vortex of black and gray, streaked with crimson lightning. A strange sense of foreboding settled in my chest, but curiosity compelled me to take a step forward. Lost, are we? The voice was soft and lilting, yet it carried an otherworldly weight that sent a chill down my spine. I turned sharply, my senses on high alert. She emerged from the mist like a shadow given form. Her movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, as if the air itself bent to her will. Her beauty was otherworldly, pale skin that seemed to glow faintly, hair that cascaded in dark waves, and eyes that shimmered like galaxies trapped within them. She wore a black gown that clung to her figure, intricate patterns of bone and gold etched into the fabric. Who are you? I asked, my voice steady despite the unease gnawing at me. Her lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. You don't know? Oh, darling, I'm hurt. She stepped closer, her bare feet gliding soundlessly across the ground. I am Death. Lady Death's words hung in the air, a mix of playful charm and sinister intent. The way she looked at me, like a predator inspecting its prey, sent shivers down my spine. This wasn't just any adversary. This was Death, personified, incarnate, standing before me with a bemused expression and a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. I've heard of you, I said cautiously, trying to keep my voice even. But I didn't expect we'd meet so soon. What the hell just happened? I wanted to lie yet I ended up saying such a stupid thing. What the hell should I say if she asks me how I know her? Ah, crap. Of course, I am in my soul form, and before death, who could lie? Shit. Lady Death's smile grew wider. Ah, so you are aware of me. That is so rare. Most mortals can't understand my existence and recognize me, really. How odd. Her voice dripped with honeyed malice, a melody that seduced and unnerved me simultaneously. Words rippled through the space between us like an animate air responding to her whims. I swallowed hard, my heartbeat beating rapidly even as I tried to appear calm. Why am I here? I asked, plant both feet firmly on the ground. My body felt as if the weight of the world now fell on my shoulders, a burden in her presence. I stood tall, repressing the oppressive force by force. I could feel the Phoenix Force, so that's something. I knew I wasn't dead, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation. You brought yourself here, she said, her trace of an idle finger through the air. The mist around her coiled like a serpent. That little stunt you pulled with the Phoenix Force left cracks in your soul. Cracks I couldn't resist slipping through. Figures, I muttered, though I wasn't sure if I was trying to reassure myself or buy time to think. Death tilted her head to one side, examining me as if I were some particularly fascinating bug under glass. Then, with a single step, she closed the distance between us. My breath hitched as her hand rose to brush lightly against my cheek. She was cool, not unpleasantly so, either. It was almost comforting. And that was the most unnerving thing of all. Seduction. You intrigue me, Aaron, she whispered, now softer, almost tender. Your soul. It burns brighter than most. I can taste your defiance, your fear, your strength. Her eyes narrowed a little, and her smile turned wicked. It's delicious. She licked her lips with a smile. Well, her smile was like one of those horny nympho girls you see in anime, or a nympho-yandere with a deadly smile. I stepped back instinctively but felt the earth tug at my feet, keeping me planted in the soil. I don't even know if it's soil or something else. Whatever. Gotta stay strong. Delicious. I said, trying to sound firm while my heart pounded with excitement. If you're here to collect my soul, you're wasting your time. Death's laughter sounded like she was making broken glass tinkle. Oh darling, you're misunderstanding me. I'm not here to collect you, not just yet anyway. She leans in a bit closer, her voice dropping into a whisper. I'm here to make you an offer. An offer. I repeat, my tone laced with suspicion. She nodded, circling me slowly, her gown trailing behind her like liquid shadow. You've seen the chaos that's coming. The Sentinels, Trask, politics and games. And beyond that. She paused, her eyes locking with mine. You've seen it, haven't you? The alien signal. The storm brewing in the cosmos. Thanos is coming. That bastard? Wait a second. Don't tell me this version is that freaking insanely in love with Death Thanos? Shit. If Death was bringing him up now, it couldn't mean anything good. And you're telling me this because... I prompted, crossing my arms. Death stopped in front of me, her gaze piercing. Because he wants you dead. Thanos wants me dead? I couldn't help the incredulous laugh that burst out of my mouth. What for? I'm just a guy with a fiery bird. Her expression grew dark, and for the first time, I saw something akin to frustration flash across her face. You underestimate yourself, Aaron. You've caught his attention. He's jealous of the bond we could share. That caught me short. What bond? I remember Death using mortals to play her games and even seducing some just for fun. And judging from our conversation so far, I am her new plaything. Death's smile returned, slow and serpentine. Ah, you are clever, aren't you? Playing coy won't save you, darling. You know what I want. Her hand brushed against my chest this time. You. At my side. My partner. My equal. The weight of her words sank into me, and it hit me like a jolt that she wasn't just playing games with me. She was dead serious. Death, the eternal force, needed me as her consort. It had my insides twisting, but I managed to meet her gaze. And what if I say no? I asked, my voice steady as hell though an inner maelstrom churned within me. Her eyes sparkled with mirth. Oh, you'll say yes, she purred. You'll beg me for the chance. Let me show you why. Before I could move, the whole world changed. The empty plain of the desert dissolved into darkness, and I was overwhelmed by a deluge of senses. Images rolled before my eyes, victories, ecstasies, and powers so overwhelming that I felt a losing of breath. I stood at the head of armies, commanding forces that would make even the Phoenix Force seem like a mere spark. I felt her touch, her presence, her whispers of eternity. It was intense. For a moment, I almost said yes. But beneath all of this, I felt the lie. This was no gift of power. It was a leash, gilded and masquerading as freedom. If I let myself into her arms, there was no escape. I gritted my fists, pushing the images aside. "No," I said, my voice steady. Death's smile faltered, just for a moment. "No," she repeated, as though the word were a strange new verb to her. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You're good, I'll give you that," I said, forcing a smirk. "But I know your game. You offer power, pleasure, whatever I want, but there's always a price. And I'm not interested in paying it." Her expression shifted, surprise giving way to something darker, more dangerous. But beneath it all, I caught a glimmer of admiration. "You're stronger than I thought," she admitted, her voice dipped in curiosity. "Most would have given up by now." "Yeah, well, I'm not most," I said, crossing my arms. "And if Thanos is coming for me, I'll handle him on my terms, not yours." Death looked at me for a long time, her face inscrutable. Then, to my utter astonishment, she laughed, a real musical sound that resonated through the nothingness. "Oh, Aaron, you are adorable," she said, her smile coming back. "You think you can resist me, but all you've done is make me all the more curious. Fine. Play your little game of defiance. I'm watching. Kill Thanos and his army. Show me a bloody show filled with death, and then I might just give you a kiss to die for." The mist began to roll in upon her, and I felt the weight on my chest begin to lift. But just before she vanished, she leaned in one last time, her lips brushing against my ear. "Remember this, darling, you can't outrun me. No one can." And with that, she was gone. I gasped, sitting upright in the infirmary bed, my heart pounding. The machines around me beeped in protest, and Kitty stirred beside me, her eyes groggy with sleep. "Aaron," she murmured, blinking up at me. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said, though my voice trembled. "Just a bad dream." But as I lay back down, the weight of Death's words lingered. She was watching, and the game was just beginning. The forge world of Nidavellir was enormous, a floating foundry in the space. The big star shone inside at its center, giving power to the old machines of the dwarves. Tall buildings made of shiny metals with great detail carvings stood across the large ring-shaped world. The dwarves of Nidavellir had been producing powerful weapons for hundreds of thousands of years, like the famous Mjolnir and Gungnir. The dwarves worked hard, their big hands moving with care as they shaped raw metal into strong and good weapons for their allies. Above them, the Asgardian guards stood at significant places, watchful, their golden armor shining in the bright light of the forge. Now, though, tensions ran high. They heard about the Mad Titan on the move, so they were extra vigilant. Well, their fear has arrived. A massive shadow fell over the star as the earth trembled beneath the dwarves' feet. From the darkness came big warships, their bodies dark, glowing with menace as they peered down into Nidavellir. The largest ship, a dreadnought shaped like a blade, loomed at the forefront, and aboard it stood the Mad Titan. Thanos. With the weight of his massive golden armor upon his back, he seemed strong and invincible. His cold, calculated eyes swept across the forge world as he beamed down. Following him was a massive entourage of his loyal Black Order and Chitauri warriors, gearing up to bring battle. As Thanos walked forward and stopped before the gate. In the center of Nidavellir was the forge's master, Eitri, the king of the dwarves. Eitri was very tall, even taller than his fellow dwarves, and he looked strong with powerful arms built from years of making things. Next to him, his warriors and the Asgardians that were there stood ready, with their weapons prepared. Eitri's voice boomed loud and strong. "Thanos, this is no place for a Titan. Turn back, or face the consequences." Thanos paused and a small serious smile spread across his face. "Ah, Eitri," he said. "King of the Forge. Creator of wonders. I come not as your enemy, but with an offer." Eitri squinted. "We do not desire anything from you. You misunderstand me, I need your talent," Thanos said, his voice steady but full of power. "A tool, no a vessel. To harness the full power of the Infinity Stones. A new Infinity Gauntlet, made from the strongest metal in the universe. Make that for me, and I'll let you and your people live. A fair deal, I say." A ripple of murmurs spread through the dwarves, but Eitri silenced them with a raised hand. He stared directly at Thanos, his jaw set. We do not forge for tyrants. You'll find no ally here. Thanos gazed angrily. I wished you would understand, he said. But if you will not make the gauntlet on your own, then I will take it from you by force. Eitri stepped forward and set his great hammer on the ground with a crash. Dare threaten Nidavellir? We are not so easily conquered, Titan. Thanos didn't say anything. He just raised his hand. In a single movement, the sky was filled with chaos. The Chitauri descended like a plague, their grotesque forms raining down from ships that blackened the sky. Screeching war beasts and hovering craft swarmed the massive foundry, their energy weapons firing indiscriminately. The Asgardian guards immediately sprang into action. Shouts of commands rang out as golden shields rose to form an impenetrable phalanx. With spears glowing with celestial energy, they unleashed a volley of blasts, cutting through the first wave of Chitauri. Dwarven cannons, embedded in the forge's walls, roared to life, spitting molten projectiles that vaporized enemy ships in mid-air. Eitri himself led the charge, swinging a massive war hammer forged from URU metal. With each strike, he crushed enemies beneath him, their bodies crumpling like brittle glass. His warriors fought valiantly, their axes and maces tearing through the Chitauri ranks with unrelenting fury. But Thanos was not idle. Thanos strode through the chaos. Energy blasts ricocheted off his armor as though they were mere sparks. A group of Asgardian warriors charged him, armed with an arsenal glowing from enchantments. Thanos sent them flying with a single sweep of his massive arm, causing the armor to crumple under sheer strength. The Black Order, Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, Cull Obsidian, and Corvus Glaive entered the fray, all individually causing mayhem. Ebony Maw floated enormous chunks of machinery down at the dwarven defenses with his telekinesis. Proxima Midnight fought through the battlefield with her spear, slicing through Asgardians and dwarves alike. Cull Obsidian smashed through fortified walls with brutish force, and Corvus Glaive sliced everything on the way. Among the disarray, Thanos came upon the central forge. Their Nidavellir's molten heart pulsed with a blinding light, and in the way of Eitri stood a hammer crackling with raw power. You will not desecrate this forge, Titan. Eitri roared. Thanos stopped, his expression unreadable. And who will stop me? You. Thanos lunged at Eitri, his fist right above the dwarf's face. Eitri's hammer met Thanos' gauntlets in a shower of sparks, but the mad Titan's strength was overwhelming. He caught Eitri's next strike with one hand and drove a brutal punch into the Dwarf King's chest, sending him sprawling. Though Eitri was down, the dwarves fought on with unrelenting fury. Massive automaton constructs, built to defend the forge, came to life. These towering machines, forged from URU and powered by the star itself, tore through the Chitauri ranks with mechanical precision. Their massive fists crushed ships, and beams of energy shot from their cores, incinerating entire squads. But even they were no match for Thanos. The Mad Titan grabbed one automaton by its arm and slammed it on the ground before stomping on its head with his giant feet, crushing it almost instantly. Then he tore apart its arm with a sickening crunch and used it to batter another machine into a heap of metal. His sheer power was unstoppable. It didn't take long for him to rip apart those machines. Eitri struggled to his feet, bloodied but unbowed. He raised his hammer once more, but Thanos seized it mid-swing, shattering it in his grip. Enough, Thanos growled, his voice a low rumble. You have courage, Eitri, but courage will not save you. One by one, the defenses of Nidavellir crumbled. The Asgardians fought to the last man, their golden armor now scorched and broken. The dwarves, too, refused to yield, their weapons clashing against the unrelenting tide of Thanos' forces. But the outcome was inevitable. As the final automaton fell, Thanos stood amidst the wreckage, unscathed and triumphant. The survivors were at his mercy. He turned to Eitri, who lay battered but alive at the base of the forge. You will forge the gauntlet, Thanos commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Or I will wipe out every last dwarf and scatter the ashes of your precious forge across the stars. Eitri's gaze burned with hatred, but he knew resistance was futile. Slowly, he nodded, his voice a bitter growl. I'll make your cursed gauntlet. But know this, you will never win. Thanos smirked, the faintest glimmer of satisfaction in his cold eyes. Victory is inevitable. I will burn this universe and offer every single soul to my mistress. Only then will I receive her love and be worthy enough for her. And as the flames of Nidavellir dimmed under the shadow of the Mad Titan, a new weapon was born, a weapon destined to reshape the cosmos. The Infinity Gauntlet. Nowhere. The Collector's grandiose archive on Nowhere stood as a monument to his obsession with all things rare and powerful. This massive, hollowed-out head of a celestial had become the universe's most infamous repository of treasures and curiosities. Its dim corridors, lined with unbreakable display cases, held a somber stillness, until such silence was shattered by anguished screams. Taneleer Tyvan, the Collector himself, was bound to a chair made of shining alien metal. Ornate robes were torn and smeared with blood. His normally arrogant and flamboyant figure was now quivering in pain, etched all over his face. Opposite him, Gamora stood still with an icy expression as her blade pressed into his throat. "Where is it?" Gamora asked, her voice calm yet laced with menace. Gamora gripped her blade tighter, pressing it closer to the Collector's throat. Taneleer Tyvan, his face a grotesque mask of defiance and pain, sneered through the agony. "You think you frighten me, child?" he spat, blood trickling from his lips. "You are but a pawn. You, your father, even your precious Nebula, you're all inconsequential in the grand design." Gamora's expression didn't flinch. She leaned closer, her voice cutting through the stale air like the blade she wielded. "Enough nonsense, Tyvan. Tell me where the star charts are, and I'll make your death quick." The Collector let out a rasping laugh, cruel and hollow. "Death? My dear Gamora, I've made deals with powers far beyond your understanding. If you kill me, you'll awaken forces that even your Titan fears." Gamora's patience, already thin, snapped. She flipped her blade and slammed its hilt into Tyvan's ribs, eliciting a pained groan. "Stop stalling. Thanos doesn't tolerate delays, and neither do I. The charts, Tyvan. Where are they?" The Collector coughed, his elaborate chair rattling as he struggled for breath. Despite the pain, a smug grin crept onto his face. "You'll get nothing from me. I've already placed them beyond your reach, guarded by a force far greater than your father, Odin." At the mention of the All-Father's name, Gamora froze momentarily. Her grip on the blade tightened, her mind racing. She knew of Odin's reputation, his cunning, his ruthlessness, and his unmatched power. But Gamora wasn't one to back down, not with the Mad Titan's expectations looming over her. Besides, according to her information network, Odin is long dead and a fight is going on over his throne. "Odin's long gone," she said coldly, masking her unease. "Asgard is in disarray. Whatever deal you made with him died with him." Tyvan laughed loudly. "Ha ha 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 ha. Odin, dead? You truly know nothing. Do you think I would be in this situation if he's dead? I would have hunted down the stones myself if that was the case. No, he lives on. And you'll never find the charts while he still draws breath." Gamora's eyes narrowed as she studied the Collector, weighing his words. His smug expression, despite the blade at his throat, set her on edge. Tyvan wasn't a fool. If he was saying this, it was either a ploy or a dangerous truth. Her hand remained steady, the sharp edge of her blade drawing a thin line of blood against his neck. "You're lying," she said flatly, though a hint of doubt flickered in her voice. Tyvan grinned, his gold-streaked teeth catching the dim light. "Oh, Gamora. You think you know how this universe works, but you're merely scratching the surface. Let me live, and I'll give you something far more valuable than those star charts." Gamora pressed the blade closer, her voice a low growl. "Why would I spare you? Speak quickly before I end this." The Collector winced but held her gaze. "Because if you kill me, you'll remain blind to the true scheme." "Fine," she said, without changing her expression. "Odin faked his death to bait Thanos into coming for them himself. Asgard isn't weakened. It's a fortress, waiting for your father to march right into his doom. A simple trap to lure in the prey blinded by madness," the Collector said in his rasped voice. Her grip faltered slightly, the weight of his revelation settling over her like a heavy shroud. Why would Odin risk that? The stones. He could have destroyed them or hidden them or used them to get rid of Thanos or anyone dangerous. Tyvan chuckled darkly, his voice dripping with mockery. Destroy the stones? Hide them? Use them just to get rid of Thanos? Odin isn't that short-sighted. The All-Father never plays defense, child. He's a conqueror, always has been. He knows Thanos won't stop until he has all 6 stones. And you are here, aren't you? Looking for the charts. You'll inform its location to your daddy, and daddy will march to Asgard with his massive army. So he waits with Hela, Thor, Loki, and the combined might of Asgard ready to strike when your father walks into their trap. Gamera's mind raced, trying to piece together the implications. If this was true, her father's quest for the Infinity Stones wasn't the inevitability she had always believed. It was a game, and Thanos might not even be the one holding the winning hand. Her lips twisted into a scowl. But Hela? She was supposed to be sealed. What the hell is going on here? What game is Odin playing now? She wondered. Why would you tell me this? She demanded. You could have easily gotten rid of us. Tyvan's grin widened, his voice dripping with cunning. Because, my dear Gamora, while I may be many things, hoarder, schemer, survivor, I am not loyal to lost causes. Thanos may seem invincible, but the path he treads is fraught with uncertainties. If he prevails against Odin, the cost will be great. And in such chaos, there will be opportunities. Gamora's blade pressed harder, her patience razor thin. Opportunities? For you or for me? For us, perhaps, Tyvan said smoothly, his voice adopting a honeyed tone. You'll do what you must to survive, just as I have. If Thanos wins, he will be vulnerable after such a clash. You, his so-called daughter, may see a future without his shadow looming over you. But to secure that future, you'll need more than brute strength. Gamora's jaw tightened, the implications of his words gnawing at her resolve. What are you proposing, Tyvan? The collector's eyes gleamed with wicked intent. If Thanos prevails, Asgard's vaults will be ripe for the taking. Odin's original weapon, the spear forged in the fires of creation, and the Valkyrie's oldest blade, enchanted to cut through even the fabric of reality itself, will be among the spoils. That blade should be enough too. You know what I mean. Then bring them to me, Gamora, and I will ensure that what remains of your father's empire crumbles to dust. Gamora's grip faltered for a heartbeat, the weight of his proposal hanging in the air. You expect me to betray Thanos? To risk everything for your collection? Tyvan chuckled, the sound deep and sinister. Oh, not just for my collection. For your freedom. Do you truly believe the Titan will share his power? That he will ever release you from his leash? No, Gamora. When the dust settles, you'll find yourself cast aside, just like Nebula. Unless you take control of your destiny. Think about it. Gamora's emerald eyes burned with conflict as she stared down at him. The collector's words were poison, seeping into her thoughts, but there was a bitter truth to them. She had seen how Thanos wielded power, how he discarded those who no longer served his purpose. And if Odin wins, she asked, her voice a cold blade. What then, Tyvan? The collector's grin turned sly, his gaze glittering with malice. Then you'll have no need of me. Odin's wrath will scatter Thanos' forces, and you'll be free. But if the Titan stands victorious, you'll need the weapons of gods to ensure you remain standing. I am merely offering you a lifeline, child. The question is, will you seize it? Gamora stood motionless, her blade still at his throat, as her mind churned with possibilities. Tyvan's proposal was dangerous, treacherous, and possibly suicidal. But it was also a chance, a sliver of hope in a universe dominated by her father's will. She activated the self-destruct bomb in the army behind her, causing them to explode into meat and blood. She couldn't possibly let them live and give Thanos this information. I'll consider it, she said finally, her voice low and venomous. But if I find out you've lied to me, your fate will be worse than theirs. Tyvan coughed, blood staining his ornate robe, yet his smile never wavered. Oh, Gamora. I never lie. I simply curate the truth. With a swift motion, Gamora withdrew her blade, leaving the collector gasping and clutching his neck. She sheathed the weapon and turned, her steps echoing through the dim archives. As the shadows swallowed her form, the collector's laughter followed her, a chilling reminder of the tangled web she now found herself ensnared in. Let the game begin. He wiped the blood off his mouth. His wounds began to heal as he stood, cracking his neck.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.